Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Stromer saved it inbounds to Purdue. Purdue with a 5-on-4. Out to Jones. Lance another three. Left wing. Triple time. Thank you, Lance Jones. We needed that one, baby.
Poland on a drive under the basket. Kicks in the corner. Cam Jones. Open three. You know it's good. Time for a Cam Jones three. Baby, it's sweet.
Keeps the dribble back to Kerriman. That's a long three by Alex. Good. Oh, man, did he drill that. Long way.
Head to KJ. Up to poor Dickinson. Look out. Here he comes. Hunter Dickinson barreling down the lane. Throws it down.
Hurts takes the snap. The quarterback keeper. He runs up the middle. He scores. He scores.
Well, happy Thanksgiving week to everybody. Just a couple things. First of all, I want to congratulate all the teams playing for state championships here. Wish I could be a part of it. Wish I could go out and watch and celebrate their excellence. But I want to make sure that we congratulate them. I want to congratulate Coach Walker and the women's soccer team making the Elite Eight. That's a really big deal in our house, and we're very excited for them. I want to congratulate Coach Cook and the women of Nebraska volleyball for being Big Ten champs, and I look forward to them making their run. So it's great to be here, great to be a part of so many excellent teams and be a part of such a great athletic department.
See, that's the one that doesn't come in hard enough. Shane, I need you to find me some stuff that the beat drops a little bit harder, because I'm just waiting.
Your finger in the air.
I'm waiting for it, and then it's like
your finger goes up in the air like you want to add something to like I guess like a classroom setting. Like you're like trying to like get the teacher to clarify something, and then your finger goes down because she like acknowledged you but said you're not getting a question.
Yeah,
and you're just
it's the sad trombone noise instead of the beat dropping. It's just, good morning. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's Andrew Rogers. Shane Schillerberg is producing and making me sad with the bad beat drops.
Just like Valdez Scantling.
Oh my God. We're live
just
on
bad drops.
AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities on the H&H Chevrolet stage. Yeah, let's start there, because obviously both of us were watching. We were doing the dual setup yesterday.
I wish YouTube TV would allow me to watch the state game.
I know.
And the Monday Night Football game.
I know that the YouTube TV execs are listening, because this is their prime programming here, because we are live on YouTube as well as Twitter if you want to stream along, as TK already is joining us. We appreciate you, TK. Yeah, I need them to allow me to choose the things I want in my quad box or in my dual box or in my tri box here. That's what I need out of you guys. Let's make that happen so that I can watch. I mean, listen, I've got the multi-TV setup, so it's not a big deal. But there's days where there's more than 2 games, there's more than 4 games. I might need to go quad box on 2 TVs, get like an 8-game NFL red zone thing going here. I need you to help me out a little bit.
You're funny, because the quad box actually exists on NFL red zone.
I know. See, that's what I need, the NFL red zone. Like I need YouTube.
You need that, but for college. You need that for just a variety of things you want to watch.
And I need YouTube TV to allow me to choose.
Yeah, and
my quad box.
And sometimes they do.
So they've got it, but you can't choose the games in there.
Well, so yes and no, because my buddy informed me over the weekend we were watching college games at his place, and you can go to the game you want to watch. So say it was Huskers, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
You can click on that and then say show. There's like a button that says show me more.
Yeah.
And then
it'll give you options.
Yes. Yeah. There's options of
so it's not like there's just one. But I can't customize.
I know what you're saying.
I need to customize.
And the customization is what should be in there. They should have a list of the 4 games, and just like you would fill in the bubbles on a standardized test, you should fill in 4 bubbles and then hit go, and then those 4 games should pop up on the screen.
Or like if you're already in quad box, because you can do they already have it this way, is if you're in quad box, you can scroll over to see which volume you want to hear. So once you're scrolled over, you should just be able to change the channel on that box.
Okay, what do you mean by that one?
Okay, so
I know what you're talking. I'm halfway there.
Okay, so you got the quad box, right?
And I've scrolled over to get the volume of Air Force UNLV.
Yes, so like you can change which one you want the volume on. Once you're on that box, you should be able to like click on it and change that particular channel in just that quadrant.
I know what you mean now. Okay, so if there was Air Force UNLV and I didn't want to watch that, I can click on it and then I can go to Georgia, Tennessee.
Yeah, and just say like it'll give you a list of games you can change to.
There is a way to make it. There is a way to make it work.
I'm hoping for next football season, YouTube TV's got it figured out here. And if you do, I will be your biggest proponent. You can come support the show. That'd be lovely.
I'm still a big fan.
Oh yeah, I am too. I tried a bunch of other stuff because they did something that made me mad, and you know how sometimes you're like, I'll try something different. I tried a bunch of different services, and was like, you know what? I think the one that I like best is still YouTube TV. So they just need, and the quad box is nice. I just need to make a little tweaks.
Yeah, you just need them to drop a new album.
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
Like Taylor Swift.
And not I need them to be in their, not just their quad box era. I need them to be in their custom quad box era.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
Speaking of Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce was on the football field last night.
Yeah, he was, and he's talking about retiring too. And now, like, that's kind of like ramping up. Is it because the Chiefs are like low key not performing to the ability that people expect them to, or is it because the long term like injuries, the hits that he's taken over the years, and really just you look at a guy and he just it's nonstop production. Like he's always involved in hits on the field. You wonder if this catches up to him.
Yeah, well, it's kind of the same thing with Gronk when we had his retirement that felt a little early back in the day too.
Except he was on the IR a lot.
He was
now
injured.
The IL.
Yeah, he was injured way more than Kelce is, but they play very similar styles in that they aren't just pass receiving tight ends. A lot of the tight ends now are just basically inline receivers, right? But Kelce, guys like Kittle, guys like Gronkowski actually block and kind of do a traditional tight end role in addition to being incredible receivers. And that's one of the more taxing positions in football, I think, because not only do you get close to the collisions that you have in an offensive line, defensive line situation, but then you're also running a ton and taking these huge hits over the middle, and not as much as it used to be, right? But you're still taking a pounding on those receptions. And, now that he's also, I read somewhere, and this is not Taylor Swift related, but I read that he's like pretty underpaid compared to his production for the Chiefs. But his business managers are like, yeah, the NFL is kind of his side hustle at this point. Like he makes so much money in endorsements and the podcast with his brother and stuff like that.
There's podcast New Heights.
Yeah, I think that's what it's called. I don't know. I just see the clips on TikTok all the time. I've actually never gone and listened to a whole episode. I haven't
either. I know a lot of people like it.
Yeah, I like the clips that I see. Like it's pretty entertaining, and I think I'm more of a Jason guy than a Travis guy, but I like Travis.
I don't know if I'm a Kelce guy.
That's fair.
Altogether.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's my podcast.
Jason's wife is very funny.
Is she?
Yeah, she's been on the podcast a couple times.
I saw the time where he brought his kids on to say goodnight to Trav. And Trav is like, he's totally that uncle that he's you. He's the guy that really just doesn't want kids. Like he's cool with like saying it like over the screen, but he's not one to like really be that nurturing type.
Yeah.
I don't know if Trav can ever settle down. So when I was in Kansas City for the draft,
this is pre Taylor Swift and Trav.
This is pre, and you know what? I don't know. Maybe T Swift.
Maybe who knows? Maybe that thing's been going on longer than we thought.
Settle him down a bit. But I had some buddies meet me down there, and they were like, "Hey, let's go over to Power and Light after you're all done for the day." I'm like, "All right, yeah, that's fine. That sounds good." So we go over there, and there's like a nightclub in the Power and Light district.
Okay,
and we walk in. And like in there is Jackson Smith and Jigba, who just got drafted like 6th overall, whatever it was.
Feeling good.
It wasn't 6th overall, but it was pretty close to that. CJ Stroud had his own booth in there.
Okay, number 2. Let's see you.
And Kelce is behind the DJ booth, just completely bumping. He's double fisting. He's going to Chase Young was there.
Okay.
It was a crazy spread of NFLers, and I'm just kind of sitting there.
49er great Chase Young. People forget.
Yeah, I'm not really sitting there. I'm standing there because there's no room to sit down in that club when all 4 of those guys are in there. And I was like, Travis Kelce is somebody that loves to have a good time and like loves to have a good time to the point that he was there the next night. So like, I know like somebody out there is probably like, well, hey, like you can go out when you have kids, like that's fine. And it's like, yeah, but not when you go out every single night. And I think that's what Travis likes to do. So in terms of saying goodbye to his nieces, it was kind of like, hey, girly. It was like, I'm your summer camp counselor. Like that was the vibe I got from Trav.
I am in no way a disciplinary figure in your life. Don't look to me for life advice. Just smile and wave and GTFO. Like, come on.
Go to sleep. And that's why Jason's like, let's make these ad reads go as long as possible. They're about to get into the
bath. Speaking of people that seemed like they were out and having too much of a good time, maybe the night before was Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who I don't know if he, maybe had a little, looked like he maybe had a little hangover when he can't bring that ball in. I first of all, good on Patrick Mahomes for trying to be like the good quarterback leader and be like, that's on me. That's not on you, big guy.
That hit him throw was beautiful.
That was perfect. The funny thing? So I was watching the highlights on mute because I think I was rewatching a part of the Class B game. And when he lets go of the ball, I was like, oh, is this a highlight of him overthrowing it? And then I realized what play it was as it got to his hands. Because when he throws it, it's like, oh man, I'm not sure if he's going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's perfect
every time.
Hits him in the hands
every time.
And
he found Justin Watson on a beautiful third down ball in the third quarter too, which was like 3rd and 9 off to the sideline, and it was thrown across his body.
Yeah,
and it was the only place. There's only a few quarterbacks that could make that pass, and he's one of them. The only spot and window to fit that ball through as you meet sideline in green turf is that spot, that ball. That's what Mahomes does.
Nobody can do that.
Mahomes is one of those throw guys open quarterbacks, not throw to open guys. Like there's not very many of those where there's a decent amount, not as many as there should be, looking at you, Zach Wilson, but that can throw
third stringer, Zach Wilson.
Right. That can throw to guys that are open.
Zach,
like there's a bunch of guys that can hit open receivers.
Right.
But there's not very many guys that can take a covered receiver and throw the ball in such a way that he becomes open. I mean, you're talking about like Brady, Rodgers, Mahomes. Like that's kind of the group that comes right to the top of my head. Those guys are obviously just at a whole different level at the way they play the game. That's what Mahomes does. But the one with Scantling wasn't even that. Scantling beat him by like a couple steps. It wasn't like he was bearing down on him.
It wasn't contested.
No, it was not a contested catch. And he just right off the fingertips, not even the fingertips, the palm, like it hit him in the palm.
And what's funny about a ball like that too is, yes, it's coming down at like a good speed just because, it was lofted so high, but it wasn't like a missile of a pass that Josh Allen would throw to Gabe Davis and go right
like
through
Noah
his
Gray
hands.
missed one earlier. I think it was earlier in the game. I'm losing track of all the drops because there was a lot of them, but Noah Gray missed one that was like a bullet, and it's like, yeah, you got to catch that because it literally goes right through his hands. You can sort of understand,
it's going 95 miles an hour too, toward your hands.
You can kind of understand, like, yep, just really didn't think it was
right.
But that
was a lofted ball, and it's like catching a punt, right?
Yeah.
A punt that goes over your head. You have to, and he's in stride. It wasn't like he really had to reach out too far. Like it wasn't right in his breadbasket, but it was like halfway between a full extension and the breadbasket.
It was, he definitely wasn't at full extension. I don't think he broke his stride really. And
no, that ball was in stride.
Yeah. And I actually think this, obviously I didn't play football at a high level, obviously, but I actually think
football at all.
It's a little easier to catch a ball over your shoulder that's a little bit further out because it gives you a little bit more room to kind of guide it in. Where if it's like right here, you almost kind of have to do one of these and like lean back to make sure you're like, so I actually think that ball is in the right spot.
Yeah, somewhat. He turned his shoulder, like he opened up his shoulder to face the football on a ball that may come a little bit shorter. And that's what Mahomes said. He's like, I could throw that shorter. Only he can be critical of that pass because you watch it and you're just like, well, I mean, you're not going to be 100% every time you throw a football. Like you're trying to hit somebody right in the chest, but I may throw it to Travis Kelce's left shoulder.
Yeah.
Or I may throw it like maybe a half a step further than Valdez Scantling would catch it.
That's not even
1
like a
million
half a
percent of the
step,
time. I know.
You know?
I'm trying to think about it from his perspective because like those balls, and he's an NFL wide receiver. You have to catch that ball.
Well, and
you have to make that play especially against the Eagles when you're trying to make a statement at home against one of the best teams in football.
Well, did you see Mahomes' face when he came to the podium? I know he said the right things, but you could just tell there's a level of frustration there, which totally understandable, by the way. A level of frustration there that is just kind of wearing on him almost. And and I know I don't think the Nebraska defense feels this way at all, just from what we've heard and kind of the way they've acted. But I'd be if I was in that position, I was trying to figure out, would I be more frustrated as me, a flawed human being? Would I be more frustrated as Mahomes, who feels like he can only throw to one guy ever that he thinks is going to catch the ball, in Kelce, and all of his receivers are just doing whatever, and then he looks in Miami and he's like, "Hey, Tyreek, I miss you." Or if I'd be more frustrated if I was like Ty Robinson or a key member of that defense, where you're just like, guys, you gotta give us a little bit here.
Well, and Kansas City for the longest time has put up with being mediocre on the outside because Mahomes is so good and Kelce has been so great.
But they've gone from mediocre to bad.
But he makes up for so many of the mediocrity or the mediocrity that it's kind of just like wash, rinse, repeat for them because they're Super Bowl champs, right? And they did it with a roster that was, let's be honest, So
especially the wide receivers.
So the way I look at this too is I kind of take Garrett Wilson into example here. He was expecting to have Aaron Rodgers this year. He didn't. Now he's got poor quarterback play. And so he's just as frustrated because he's not getting his reps.
Absolutely.
The Chiefs need to find a way to get a guy that is frustrated in their room and make a good, solid trade for a superstar young wide receiver. They just have to find a way to do that so that Mahomes can have somebody. And I'm not even going to say they need Garrett Wilson because that price tag would be so high.
Right.
And maybe it's a little out of reach, but who's to say that you can't go after, Jalen Waddle at some point, or a wide receiver 2 that could be looked at as a borderline wide receiver 1.
Yeah. Honestly,
they need a young receiver with hands.
If you just had a real wide receiver 2, I think you'd be in really good shape. But the fact is, we talked about Kelce to start this. He's not going to be around forever to make up for all these issues. It's really similar, honestly, to the progression. I mentioned Tom Brady earlier. It's really similar to the progression of some of the Patriot teams in the mid to late 2000s before they got Randy Moss. So after the 03-04 Super Bowls, before Randy Moss, there was that couple years where their wide receiver corps was just brutal. And as good as Tom Brady was, or was becoming at that point, he could not get guys open. He was throwing to a washed up David Givens and a over the hill Troy Brown and these guys that were on the end of careers that were pretty solid, but just could not get it done anymore. And then they went out and they got Randy Moss. They need their Randy Moss trade.
There's good teams like that have the down years. It's funny that you brought that up because I was going to bring up the 49ers. I mean, they went won 2 Super Bowls in the beginning of the night or in the 80s, and then they had the back end. So I mean, they had the down years in between there. Now the down years weren't down years like the Raiders. Their down years were just hey, let's make it to the playoffs and maybe win a game and not make it to the Super Bowl. So they got to fill in the gaps. That's what Kansas City has to do.
I'm looking at the NFL draft list because the more I thought about it, the more I'm Jordan Addison went 23rd in the draft?
Yeah, I just had it up here. He went 23rd to Minnesota.
Who did the Chiefs take in the first round? Did they take a receiver?
No, they took D-end out of K-State. Felix.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right. They took that Uzama kid.
Uzama. So, I mean, if you're looking at guys that went as wide receivers after him, there's not.
But what I'm thinking about here is Jordan Addison was a highly touted recruit coming out of college.
Yeah.
People knew his name because when he was at Pitt, he was the leading receiving.
He was the Blitnikoff. I think he won the Blitnikoff.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
That best wide receiver in the nation.
Yeah, because Pickett and him won the award, won Heisman Blitnikoff same year.
Correct. So why aren't the Chiefs, where even if they're 31, 32 in the draft order, 30, trading up?
Yeah, they're at 31.
They have to find a way to trade up to the early 20s. When there's a good wide receiver draft, they have to find a way to do that.
So there was a run on wide receivers. There's 4 straight taken from 20 to 24. It was Jackson Smith and Jigba at 20, Quentin Johnson at 21. Zay Flowers at 22, Jordan Addison at 23.
Mm-hmm. And I would argue to say the back end receivers there are the better receivers, at least right now.
Yeah, I would take Jordan Addison. Although, again, I think Jackson Smith and Jigba is super talented. He hasn't had the year that you want to yet. But yeah, honestly, if you're Patrick Mahomes, you take any of those 4 guys. Any of them.
Because you can develop them and you can win with them with a guy like Mahomes.
Well, especially a coach like Andy Reid.
And the Chiefs just have to find a way, at least in this upcoming draft, to pull that off.
Yeah.
Because you're going to compete for a Super Bowl. You will. This Chiefs team will. Despite losing to the Eagles the way they did, they're going to compete for a Super Bowl. What are they, 7-3?
Yeah, they're 7-3. They're still first in the division.
It's going to be the Chiefs. I don't think the 49ers on a good day can ever be beaten. The Ravens are atop of the AFC right now, and they're a really good football team. Lamar is surrounded by weapons for like the first time in a long time. And when I say surrounded, I mean he is surrounded.
Yeah.
And then you have
you've got the Dolphins that are still pretty good.
And I would actually leave the Dolphins out for the scenario. If I had to build like a top 4 in the NFL currently.
So I think in the AFC, I've only got.
It would be the Eagles. The Eagles would be the other team that I didn't say.
Okay, okay.
That would be the 4 teams I had. So what did I say? The Chiefs. I said
Chiefs, 49ers,
Ravens, and
Eagles.
So those are 2 AFC teams, right?
I was looking at
2
all
NFC
AFC
teams.
Yeah.
Like I would leave the Dolphins out of the top 4 of those top
of the whole
4.
league. Yes, yeah. I was looking at top 4 AFC. So I confused your point there.
So what I'm saying is the Chiefs will be somewhere between 28 and 32 this year. Yeah. Again, in draft order, wherever you are, you have to make a trade up. Like if there's a receiving group like we saw last year, which I haven't looked that deep, and I could, and somebody could point that out to me, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Twitter, point out to me like what this order will look like. Because after Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm just kind of like, who else is
honestly
there?
I don't get into I love the draft, but I don't really start paying attention in terms of mock drafts and stuff until after college.
And that's exactly where I kind of land too. But I'll look at a mock draft now
if I see one pop up. Yeah.
Honestly, when we go into break, I'll probably look at a mock draft.
But I start
it's on the top of
actively
mind.
seeking them out after college is over.
If there is a wide receiving group that comes into this year's NFL draft like we saw last year, maybe like we saw a few years ago when Justin Jefferson got drafted like 24th overall, 23rd, I think, to the Vikings, which, gosh, they land some pretty good wide receivers in the 20s. That's what the Chiefs have to be aspiring to do. That's what they need for Mahomes in this moment.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I think they will address it. I think that this year has gotten to the point where they understand the limit of how much Patrick Mahomes can overcome, because you can take a guy like that for granted and say, well, hey, he can make anybody look good. Well, not if they don't catch the ball when he throws it in the perfect spot for a go-ahead touchdown. Coming up, we're going to have Gary Dolphin, Iowa play-by-play voice later at 7:45. Our usual Mike Schaefer. We're going to reconnect with John Fanta, and we're going to wrap up the show previewing Ohio State, Michigan with Tim May, who covers Ohio State for Letterman's Row. All that and more coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
You know, obviously Illinois coming off of Michigan. We went out and practiced that Sunday. We didn't practice last night. We met, we watched the tape. You know, we got back late. I wanted the guys to go home and sleep. And but we met. We went over the game tape from Saturday night. Got started with the guys on their Iowa prep. They'll be in tonight. They'll practice tomorrow. We'll practice tomorrow morning. You know, there's no school Wednesday, so we'll practice Wednesday morning. I'll cut the guys loose, let them go home if they're local, bring them back Thursday at some point, walk through and have a normal week. So it'll be very similar to what we did against Illinois with the same amount of practices.
Welcome back. Good morning here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here as well.
Howdy.
We are live on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We've got a old friend of the show here, Michigan Lance, giving us a call on that Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. Lance, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, good morning, boys. How y'all doing?
What's up, Lance?
Andrew, welcome back. It is in order. I know it's been a while since I called in. And then congratulations to both of you on the new show going forward now.
Appreciate you, man.
Going forward. So,
thank you, Lance. Appreciate that.
Hey, the Nebraska State Class A championship game.
Yes, sir.
All right. Like, I know Damon gave you guys coach speak yesterday. And I understand what people are saying, and those people are right. Like, Westside, I think Westside wins by 2, maybe more, minimum 2 touchdowns.
Oh, I thought you were just going to stop at 2. I'm like, Lance, no way.
No, it's going to be minimum 2. I give minimum 2. I think even more. Here's the thing. Like, in football, you're right. Anybody can be beat on any given day. And here's the thing. If Elkhorn South plays their best, right, and Westside plays their best, who's winning that game?
Westside every time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, so you're hoping and wishing and praying that after all these years, because they're working on their 3rd championship, right, in 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So you're hoping that Westside isn't going to play their best, which they haven't done all year. Well, I guess you could say that against Miller South. They won by, 3 touchdowns, not 4 or 5? I mean, that's very, very not good odds that that's going to happen. And you got all these guys returning that's been in the program these last 4 years. That's championship caliber. And one thing about Coach Lamanji is he's going to bring a disciplined, well-coached, tough team.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to match your toughness. And of course, South is tough. They're going to run the ball at you. They're going to hit hard.
Mm-hmm.
But so does Westside. It is Westside, but what Westside has that Elkhorn South doesn't are the playmakers. Because let's say you stop Jamez Ross, right? All right, good. Hey, we're stopping him on the run. Then let's say you stop Anthony Rizak. Hey, we got the quarterback and the running back, Matt. Hey, we're good. That run game is shut down. Well, all we have to do is throw it out there to Damon, to Caleb Benny, you know what I mean, and a couple, and Chris Jones, and then right, is that his name? Did I say that right?
Yeah, Christian Jones. Yep, you got it.
Yep. And so then let's say on offense, right? Hey, we're moving, but hey, we got a punt. You know what I mean? Then you got a punt to Caleb Benny. Like you can't get playmakers on the field, whereas Westside can get away from their playmakers because they don't have enough. You know what I mean? So that's why I don't think it's going to be I think it'll be good early, but I think Westside pulls away late by, 2 to 3 touchdowns. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Lance.
And in the championship game playoffs, that's pretty good.
Appreciate the call, man. I agree.
Yeah, we're on the same page.
Yeah, he's 100% right. It's kind of like what we saw at Bennington last night with Skutt. As much as Skutt, could match them in toughness and physicality, you saw how much Bennington's playmakers wore on them.
Yeah,
they just wore them down, and then the touchdowns came with it. It wasn't a high-scoring game, but defensively, that Bennington front, step back to the linebackers, step back to the secondary, all of them were just completely shutting down Skutt in moments that they just couldn't move the ball down the field. And then you have the playmakers on offense, and you had Sandman, who was excellent. I thought his prowess in the pocket was really solid. And then of course you have the running back Quentin Archer. About slipped my mind. He's a beast. He plowed over everybody.
And the thing on the defense that I wanted to talk about, and Jacob Padilla, our colleague over here at Hurrdat Sports, tweeted this out during the game, was talking about how the ability for Bennington to both defend the middle of the field well and go sideline to sideline without sacrificing anything is pretty remarkable. And not just from a high school standpoint. That's hard to do at any level, right? And that's why Scott couldn't get anything going, because you would think, oh, they're spread out. We can, if they're defending the edges well, then maybe we can pop them up the middle. That just wasn't the case. If you usually with most teams, you can get something to find a little bit of a weakness in the defense, and that just wasn't the case last night. And honestly, all season for Bennington. Bennington's defense has been their calling card. They lost some playmakers from last year's team on the offensive side of the ball, and so the defense really carried the water this year, and it was an incredible effort. And I'm sure for Bennington, it felt like validation because of how controversial the first game of the season was, where I didn't think the guy was in for the touchdown. It's probably inconclusive because you're looking at a cell phone video that's not at like the right angle and whatever. But from what from what I've seen, I didn't think he got in. I don't think most people thought he got in. And so Scott kind of carried that with him as,
added motivation.
Yeah, kind of there all season being like, hey, we kind of got jobbed out of this one. We got to get back to a place where we can prove that we were the better team. And Bennington on the other side probably feels like, well, we've been disrespected all year because everybody thinks that we got a cheap one against Scott. And maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But the fact of the matter is there was no question about who was better last night. Bennington, Class B title, first Class B team ever to win 3 straight, longest win streak in Class B history.
Class B record.
39 consecutive games. Just a ridiculous run that this Bennington team has been on for the last 3 years.
Yeah, you talk about going sideline to sideline. The perfect person to use as the example in that is Kyler Lauritsen. He was all over the field. I mean, there were times where he would rush off one side and then chase down Scott's quarterback all the way down to the other sideline. I mean, it was just kind of crazy watching kind of like that engine move on defense. It was just kind of like a beautiful piece of equipment. Now, as for Scott, I do think there was a point in the game. I can't remember if it was 7-0 or if it was 14. I want to say it was 7-0
because it was 7-0 for a long time.
I thought there were times where they didn't get officiating love. And there was one drive in particular that happened, and they were deep in their own territory. They got called for an eligible man downfield. And I was like, huh? And then on their punt, their punter had his plant leg run into. And again, I was just kind of like, huh? Okay, an eligible man downfield. Like maybe you saw something that I didn't. I mean, it was the official on the sideline, the closest to the player, and I'm like, okay, like maybe I'm missing something. But there's one thing that you watch out for in all game. I was watching for it because Bennington on special teams was looking to block punts.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the entire time it was, we are going to get in this man's grill, and they got caught a little late on that play.
Yeah.
Like that's 15 yards. That's a first down. And if it was 7-0, like I think it was, who knows what could have happened after that? Like those are things that I'm just kind of like, man, like I'm not going to sit here and just, hammer down one call because Bennington did end up scoring 3 touchdowns in that game and it was 21-0 and you have to battle through adversity. But come on, you got to help a guy out in that moment.
You really do. And I think with the inability to move the ball, I don't know. Like, I don't disagree with you that there were some calls that probably should have gone their way, but I just don't know if there was enough there for Scott to get some momentum going against that Bennington defense. It just looked like they weren't going to give anything up last night. And that's a credit to Bennington, a credit to Coach Lenhart and his team. And those sick hats that look like Boston Red Sox hats.
Hey, I texted you in that moment. I'm like, Ravi needs to get himself one of those Bennington hats because that would And it is funny how a lot of high schools and even St. Louis high schools do the same thing, where you just kind of like adopt a logo and then hope no one ever calls you out on it.
Yeah, you try and change it just enough so that you're not like copyright
Those
infringement.
Bennington hats were sweet.
So yeah, if anybody from Bennington's listening, hook me up. Let's get a Bennington hat going here. We've got Gary Dolphin. He is the play-by-play voice of Iowa football, coming up next to preview Nebraska and Iowa here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
So you banking, maybe the referee won't see it. They did much better than the touchdown.
Caleb Johnson, the running back. He's got a hole. Caleb Johnson, right side. Into the end zone. Touchdown, Hawkeyes.
Wrapping up hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We're on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. And, of course, on Twitter and YouTube, you can stream us in and see our bright and shining faces. We're talking in the YouTube chat with TK about possible receivers for the Chiefs.
Which turns out there's a lot of them.
Yeah, I think there's good options there. Shane, we're still efforting Gary. Okay. We're still working on getting.
I hope like it sounds as distant over the mics as it does even in this room.
It probably sounds even more distant. He's yelling from his house over there. No, we're working on getting Gary Dolphin to preview Iowa, but we've got the Class A game coming up here as well, and hopefully we'll get to talk about that later. But it does appear that we've got Gary Dolphin here to talk about.
Shane's just talking to him like he's an old friend.
I guess we're just having a conversation over there. Don't worry about it. We're not.
Give me a thumb up, Shane.
My old friend's here.
See, I asked for a thumb up and he talks.
Yeah, it's
like
very
all
good.
I asked for was a thumb up.
Very good at taking instructions. Shane.
Instead, he just puts on his headset. He takes another 3 seconds, and now we can't talk to Gary because Shane was over here funneling away.
We are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline by Gary Dolphin, the play-by-play voice of Iowa football. Gary, how are you this morning?
A little snow over here in Iowa, guys.
Oh, man.
But other than that, a little snow and rain, kind of a combination. But doing good. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to complain about Iowa football after this year. I mean, there's plenty of complaining to do, but it's our fan base, like everybody's fan base. They all want to win every game, and sometimes things don't go the way you'd like them to. But all that matters to Coach Ferentz is the left-hand column and the right-hand column, and right now it's 9-2.
Gary, it's kind of funny because you bring up Iowa fans, and obviously the stuff with Brian Ferentz this year has been, even before the announcement was made, kind of a shadow hanging over the program. But when you look at this year, it's really not any different in any serious degree to what Iowa football has been doing for most of the last 20 years. Why, in your mind, have people kind of, at least fans around Iowa, kind of gotten more and more seemingly irritated with the way in which this Iowa program wins?
I think it's probably the conservative nature of Kirk. He really hasn't changed. I mean, I remember the Brad Banks and the Drew Tate and Ricky Stanza years where they were winning, 9, 10, 11 games and scoring 35 points a game. And that was a lot of fun. But as you guys know, it comes down to the quarterback, and that's been a rocky road for the Hawks the past few years. And even when they've had the good, solid quarterbacks, Ferentz is not going to change. I don't know how many times I have to tell people this, but they don't want to. They don't want to hear it. And Brian is free to call his own plays, but he's also got Dad looking over his shoulder, and they game plan together every week along with the rest of the offensive staff. So it's fans are fans. I get it, and our fans, as you guys know, are rabid, just like Nebraska's. But if you anymore these days, if you're not, and I think it's a byproduct of the NFL, if you're not running air raid and 5 wide and empty backfields every snap, there's something wrong with you. And Iowa still likes to do it the old-fashioned way, and that's 2 backs, 2 tight ends, or 1 back and 3 tights, and power their way down the field. Take your shots, obviously. They haven't been able to do that this year because of the obvious, which is no starting quarterback, or at least your number 1 quarterback. Your 2 best pass catchers. The offensive line's been disarray because of injuries. Now they're settled down. They're playing pretty good. Last couple of weeks, 2 of the top 2 running backs missed, I think, a total of 3 or 4 games. The defense has been solid and straightforward. Special teams have been off the map, and they've leaned on those 2 divisions or those 2 sectors to get where they are today. But now the offense is slowly coming with Deacon Hill, who hadn't played in 3 years, and he was, needless to say, a little rusty. So I just think it's the frustrations of any fan base when you're not putting up 40 points a game. And getting 5 takeaways a game, things are upsetting to them, and that's okay. That tells you the program has had success and will continue. I mean, it's the 22nd year out of 25 that they've been bowl eligible, and I think that's a pretty good track record. I understand there's a lot of bowls, but playing in December and January is a fun thing.
Gary, you mentioned the defense and special teams sort of acting as a spark for that Iowa offense and frankly, leading to victories every now and then too. How important was the win over Illinois, though, in terms of learning to win without Cooper DeJean on the field?
Yeah, it was huge. I think it was huge. Everybody was wringing their hands from Wednesday on when the news broke that Cooper had injured his lower leg and out for the rest of the season. I mean, it's a devastating blow to the defense. Yet, if there's a team game that we watch and love, it's football. You got 11 guys out there and 10 now without Cooper, but guys that have played before. And Deshaun Lee started the first 2 games this year when Jamari Harris was suspended and played admirably. And Cooper is right there coaching up Deshaun Lee, and he played really well the other night. In fact, I'm a little puzzled why Illinois kept picking on Jamari Harris. He's just short of an all Big Ten performance this year. But I mean, Phil Parker's defense, speaking of never going to change, it's your base 4-3, and he's blitzing a little bit more than he has historically. But Phil's mantra is like Norm Parker's MO, and that is, don't let him beat you over the top. Don't let him get behind you. And it's happened maybe 2 or 3 times all year. And so, it's a plug and play defense, and with or without Cooper, obviously the Hawks are a lot better with Cooper. I mean, this kid played over 400 snaps this year at cornerback. Didn't give up a touchdown. Not one score on Cooper DeJean. You watch him, and I mentioned this, I don't know, game 3 or 4 this season, when he broke a long punt return. I said, he didn't score, but he went like 50 yards, zigged and zagged. I said, this kid, they're comparing him to a bigger version of Tim Dwight. He's got a little Christian McCaffrey in him, and that's a pretty good combination. He's got great speed, and he's got that when he hits the afterburners, he is gone. You guys saw the Minnesota punt return for a touchdown that was called back. I mean, that's who he is, and he's just as adept at special teams and as he is a cornerback, and he takes the game so serious. He takes everything so serious. Never says a word, keeps his mouth shut, goes about his business. Small town Iowa kid from out by you guys there along the Missouri River, and that's who you want on your football team.
Gary, as a quick follow-up to that, because I covered Cooper in high school, so I definitely understand the comparisons that you're proclaiming. Last year in this game specifically, Iowa didn't have Cooper DeJean either, and it proved costly in the back row for that defense. Now, this Nebraska offense doesn't have a Trey Palmer, but think that could be a struggle come Friday?
Well, I think so. I mean, but I'm sure if Matt and the coaches are looking at that tape and they saw how well Harris, what's his name, Isaiah Williams is a tremendous
great
wide
receiver,
converted quarterback. Yeah, and he had 10 catches for 100 and some yards. But they threw a lot of sideline routes. Again, it's the same Phil Parker defense. Don't let them beat you over the top. And it's going to be the same way Saturday. And last year, when Cooper was concussed there, I think it was on the first series or the second series, they threw in TJ Hall, who had not played at all. And to your point, Trey's not there this year. And I watched most of that Wisconsin game last week. And, Nebraska's having some issues at quarterback like Iowa has, and for different reasons. So I think it's a different defense, a different set of offensive players from Nebraska. Iowa also lost Spencer Petras, if you remember, to shoulder separation on the first or second series, and not that Spencer's Tom Brady, I get that, but he had been there all year long and really had settled down that offense. So I think it's a different set of circumstances. I don't like to compare one game last year to one game to the same game this year. New coaching, new philosophy. So we'll see, but there's no question, there is no doubt, without Cooper DeJean, I mean, he might be the best overall player in college football. To me, certainly the best defender in the Big Ten. It's a vacancy that Iowa's going to have to live with.
Gary, real quick, got about 90 seconds left here with you. Is there anything you've seen in your prep for this Nebraska game that you have seen from the Huskers that you think might cause issues for Iowa?
Well, their defense in general. I think this is a better defense than last year. But every year, Nebraska puts defenders in the NFL. It's not that that's the be all end all, but with Deacon Hill's continuing maturation in baby steps, he's got a. But what I like about the guy is he's a great film study, great film room guy. All quarterbacks have to be that way. It's a healthier Iowa offense than we've seen. So I'm real curious to see how Brian and Kirk, how Brian in particular, Kirk in general, attack Nebraska's offense. But it's going to be the same. Yes, they're gonna play to be there in the fourth quarter and try and find a way to win it with that defense and Torrey Taylor.
That is our friend Gary Dolphin, play-by-play voice for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Gary, we appreciate your time as always. Have a good call on Friday, okay?
Thanks, guys. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
You as well, Gary. Thank you. That is Gary Dolphin, the play-by-play voice of Iowa football. I'm sure you could hear it in that voice that man is a play-by-play pro.
You can always tell the play-by-play guys from the writers.
From everybody else, yeah.
and you'll know that when we talk to Mike Schaefer next.
Speaking of writers, we've got our guy, Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. We bumped him up an hour to accommodate his schedule and our schedule because we're going to talk to John Fanta later as well. Coming up next, Mike J. Schaefer, Husker 24/7 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio, covering Nebraska football and recruiting for 24/7 Sports. Here is Mike J. Schaefer.
Yeah, that's a grown-ass man right there.
Mike Schaefer.
I don't know. There could be bacon involved.
Mike Schaefer.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank Brian Edwards for me.
Here is Mike Schaefer.
When you look at us, a lot of statistics are similar on offense and on defense. But they only have 12 turnovers in Big Ten play. So they've protected the ball better than we have over the course of the year. But great players across the board, great scheme, really physical, stop the run, force you into bad decisions, and then eventually they make a play. And, they're so comfortable in a 7-3 game. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're so comfortable in a 10-9 game. Like, their heart rate doesn't go up. And they've been doing it for a long time. They're kind of built that way. And our guys are getting used to it. You know, the last couple games have been like that for us. They've been doing that a long time.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We are on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities. And joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline is our guy, Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. Schaefer, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. How you guys doing?
What's up, Schaefer?
Not, just coming off of one of the more crushing NFL runs. I think everything I was tied to, whether it was my team and the Vikings, gambling, fantasy, pools, whatever it was, just absolutely annihilated. Like half a dozen games in which the result or whatever I need, the team is up double digits at some point in the game only to lose. So it's just not great over here, actually, to be honest.
Schaefer, I was actually thrilled with your Vikings result on Sunday because I had them plus 2.5. So I was actually very pleased with how that went.
Well, with the plus 2.5, they could also have just won 20-15. And
that's what I'm thinking here too.
It's
Schaefer.
True, but
the Bears were plus 5 or 5.5 or whatever.
Oh, you're Bears! Wow.
Yeah, you knew that.
That is the all-time. We're definitely not tanking, but we definitely weren't going to try to win that game.
Yeah,
those 3 play calls when they got the ball back.
Man,
someone should be joining Matt Canada on the unemployment line today.
And you know what? Let's add in Luke Getsy. Let's add in Matt Eberflus. Let's just give them all. Yeah, we will blame Canada.
You might have to. You might just have to clean house over there. So are you out on the Josh Dobbs experience, or what's going on there?
No, not out on it. I mean, this is what you're gonna get, right? Like he's a highly mobile quarterback that's not the most skilled passer and has ball security issues. I mean, he had fumble problems in Arizona before he got to Minnesota. His first game with the Falcons, first game with the Vikings, but against the Falcons, I mean, he had a couple horrible fumbles right off the bat. So it's not like super surprising. It's just annoying to see Alexander Madison fumble when you're up 17-9 in field goal position, driving, running the ball for like 8 yards a pop, and then he just coughs it up on a play that he probably shouldn't have. I mean, Minnesota's defense couldn't get off the field. No one was quite able to figure out. I shouldn't say that. Couldn't get off the field at the end of the game. You make Russell Wilson go 75 yards to beat you. Like, he probably shouldn't be able to go 75 yards by dinking and dunking to Pirine. So it's just an annoying loss, but it didn't ultimately matter. Like, Minnesota's still very, very good spot. They still have an incredibly light schedule ahead of them. Watching the Bears and the Lions, like it just feels like the Lions are just holding off revealing who they actually are. I was asking people if they are like the NFC Dolphins, where it's a cool, fun story, but you don't have to take it that serious because in the end, they're really not a threat to anybody that matters. So it is tough for me to take that Lions team serious. By the way, shouldn't Aiden Hutchinson be more of a four? I obviously had the big play at the end. Isn't that just like his 4th sack of the season or something? Like you would expect a little bit more out of that guy.
He needs to be more Max Crosby, Nick Bosa. He needs to elevate TJ Watt, elevate to that level for sure.
He's no Bosa. That's all we know.
He's no Daniil Hunter. That's what we know as well. I mean, few people are. That guy's a stud.
Schaefer, speaking of quarterbacks that weren't starting for your team this year, let's move over to Nebraska and talk a little bit about Chubba Purdy, who Matt Rule called a spark yesterday in his press conference. And frankly, maybe the best we've seen all year from a Nebraska quarterback that play, or at least his play last weekend. What did the team's third stringer, and I'm going to emphasize third stringer when I say this, do that brought that much needed spark? Or do you think, not really, or do you think, and do you think, even if Harburg is, say, 100% healthy this week, it should be Chubba's job?
This might not have the popularity of the Eras tour, but this week I feel like I'm going on the, I was completely wrong here tour as it's related to Chubba Purdy and what I anticipated he would be able to give Nebraska against Wisconsin. I didn't think they were going to score a touchdown in that game. I really didn't. I like the Chubba experience was pretty bad last year. The behind the scenes of it didn't sound particularly great. I did not have a lot of confidence in Nebraska being able to move the ball. And so then, of course, on the first drive, he's somehow outrunning the entire Wisconsin defense. And then same with Jalen Lloyd on the next touchdown. And then you're just thinking one, Wisconsin's throwing the towel, and two, they don't have any athletes on the back end. Nebraska should have at least two more of these long touchdowns in them with the way that game started. Of course, they didn't, they lose. But it wasn't because of Chubba. He played pretty well. And obviously, it's all tempered, right? It's not like expectations were really high, but he came in, he threw catchable balls. He was able to move the offense. I thought that drive before half to set up the field goal, they hit a couple pass plays, one of them to Malachi Coleman in the middle. There was some nice moments in there for Chubba. Definitely had everything going for the redemption arc. They just couldn't finish in overtime, which he's far from the first quarterback to be handed the loss in overtime without able to put up a point. So he shouldn't, he can join his friends and Adrian Martinez and, everyone else that has unfortunately fallen in that category. Tanner Lee. Let's see, who else are we? Tommy Armstrong, I think, has been part of this too.
I'll say he was on the front end, I think. Yeah.
It's not just like it's quarterbacks that haven't been particularly good. It's just Nebraska. It doesn't matter the situation. They're just not scoring in overtime.
Schaefer, was there a part of you when, you see Chubba Purdy house call one immediately, you see Jalen Lloyd do it on the next drive? Was there a part of you at that point where you're like, oh, Nebraska might beat the crap out of them?
Yeah, but this be what, maybe fourth time. I didn't look this up, but I was thinking about it. Third or fourth time they've had a double-digit lead against Wisconsin and then failed to put them away. This isn't unusual for Nebraska at this point. I know, and one of the most famous Bo Pelini games of all time, where Melvin Gordon runs for 400 plus yards. Nebraska was up 17-3 in that game. So, they're up 17-3 and you gave up the rushing record at the time.
Hard
only to be shattered by the running back I mentioned earlier in this game for being, the check down recipient of Russell Wilson's big day on Sunday night. So everything comes full circle. It was, it felt like it was there for just sort of this cathartic, get it all out there, kind of like Iowa last year, you hit on some of those big plays, and then you just felt good about Nebraska's defense throughout. And it didn't work that way. A couple of bugaboos, and then ultimately what has been a killer in this month of November, and really kind of quietly has derailed a lot of the season, the special teams. Yeah. Whether we want to talk about missing the field goal right before half, whether we want to talk about the punt, coverage unit giving up, I think, 30-ish yards of field position in a game which ends up in overtime, whether we want to talk about the fact Brian Buschini has 6 total kicks this year of 50 yards or more after doing it, I think, 16 times last year. So there's a lot of concern there, and it's cost Nebraska games, not a game, multiple games, with their inability to manage field position, inability to flip a field, inability to pin an opponent deep, all of these different things. And then that's to say nothing of the absolute lack of spark this team has had on kick returns or punt returns since today Ramir Johnson has basically, had the shoulder injury. So special teams has been really, really rough for Nebraska in 2023. I mean, if you want something that should be a silver lining heading into 2024, in theory, you're changing out a lot of key components. I know they're recruiting some specialists like kick returner, punt returner type players. So they're obviously attempting to address this. But, man, it is frustrating when you look up and you realize in a conference that sort of, writes an I love you card every year to punting, this laissez-faire 25-yard punts have destroyed your season. And it's really rough because Brian Buschini was the guy, right? Like he came in and he stabilized it for 1 year. This isn't new. Nebraska struggled with punting for a while. And then I don't know what happened, but from the Minnesota game on, it's just been this kind of like decline to the point where, reporters are talking about him punting at half or before games. And it's, there's less pressure in those situations and it's still pretty erratic. Like they can't count on him. That's hard. I'm not saying that Timmy Bleakroad needs to go in, but he's got one career punt for 51 yards. At this point, I'm intrigued. We've just seen what Chubba Purdy can do. Why not just find everybody's backup in the season of backups,
It's kind of a weird, who was it? Was it Connor Culp that was the kicker that was really, really good and then totally, the wheels fell off the next year? Yeah. It's almost the punting version of that with Buschini here. I mean, I don't know enough about kicking and specialists to have any idea what may have happened, but I do think you have to don't you kind of have to explore other options at this point?
Look, I think you're beyond. You have one game left. Maybe you tried out Timmy Bleakroad to do it, but my guess is, given that it's senior day, and this coaching staff has been really, really fluid in allowing guys to kind of play through their issues. I don't see them making any change for Friday, but this is, the most on-brand analysis you're going to find, right? On Friday, you are going to watch a team whose punting has derailed or hurt them most of the season versus a team who emphasized punting so much that they punt more than anyone in the conference, and they're the best at doing. They've weaponized their punting. Nebraska is looking into what it would want to be, and they are nowhere close. It's like, this sort of idea where you want the third phase to matter. Well, you're facing the team that ultimately dominates the third phase. And for you, it's been a disaster in November, like a total disaster. Every game has had some sort of huge special teams flaw in it that has cost you something. And you've lost these games by a total of, 13 points across 3 games. I mean, 3 one-score losses in the month of November to 3 reeling teams, and your special teams hasn't been able to pick you up. They are in a dangerous territory on Friday, because that is an edge that Iowa takes advantage of all the time and will do so happily in the stadium on Friday.
Schaef's got me thinking. I posted or reposted the video of the Iowa mascot shooting the hot dog out of the cannon yesterday, and I made fun of Deacon Hill's pass. I think it actually fits more with Brian Buschini's.
It might be a Buschini punt.
I'm embarrassed at how hard I laughed at that video. Because when it got sent to me and the caption basically, I was like, oh man, someone's just sitting in the front row, and
I thought somebody was going to get annihilated.
And so I'm sitting there. It's like Homer Simpson with the Hans Moleman, football in the groin video. I think I'm going to watch someone just take a hot dog shot to the face, and then it just comes out and it
just flops.
The look from the mascot to the other. It's incredible. I'm laughing just thinking about it.
You could tell the mascot, you could see through his mascot head there. He felt looking over at his team member, pure. Are you kidding me?
He looked like Mahomes looking at Valdez Scantling. Are you serious right now?
Yeah, definitely needed that touchdown too.
All right, Schaefer. We talked a little bit about this on right after the game. Ravi and I doing the post game spread on Hurrdat Sports, and we mentioned how there was just a lack of finding offensive tempo after those first 2 scores. It's almost as though Satterfield went away from what was working. And my question to you is this: how much self-evaluation and soul searching do you think Satterfield needs to do to understand that he's really been missing the mark with offensive tempo? Because it does seem like every time something is working, he changes up the scheme instead of bruising up a defense with what's working.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of self-scouting that goes into it, but so much of it will be done in the vein of like, this was your first run of going through the Big Ten. What did we learn about the looks that we're going to get? What worked in regards to sort of the Big Ten defenses we expect to see most of the time? What worked personnel-wise for what we are anticipating we're going to come back? I don't know it'll be as reflective as what, people might particularly want, and obviously people want a lot more than just reflectiveness from their offensive coordinator right now. But I continue to be in this weird spot where I don't feel like Marcus Satterfield has done a particularly good job, but I also look at like the situation that he's in, and it's hard for me to really sometimes understand, like, everyone just wants Nebraska to be this 80% run the ball team when the two biggest plays they hit on Saturday were in the passing game. Chuba Purdy scramble and the Jalen Lloyd touchdown pass. Like they need those plays because they cannot line it up and run the football at people. They cannot do that consistently. And a lot of it they can't do because there's about 9 guys in the box, almost, 70% of your possession. So they have to be able to throw the football. Like, where I run into my biggest questions of Satterfield is often timing of certain plays. Like the first down call in overtime with the option for a quarterback that hasn't gotten that many reps this year and looked completely uncomfortable doing it, just felt like, we're going to, too cute by half, I guess. We're going to catch them completely off guard here with this play. And it didn't work. Same with the Jalen Lloyd thing, where I can understand the idea, but it's also just like, if this doesn't work, we have learned this offense has to be on schedule almost to the max in order to survive. It, more than anyone, cannot afford an 8-yard loss on the first play of a drive. Like, if it's 2nd and 9 and you're trying to dial up something unique, then I think I can understand a little bit more. First 10, let's just stay on schedule. Like, so there's certain things in there that I definitely take issue with. Overall, I think a lot of it is really hard to call an offense where you haven't had that many reps with the quarterback. He probably doesn't have the full playbook of use to him because of the lack of those reps. And he has a different skill set than the guy before him and the guy had before that. I mean, if you think about it, Chuba Purdy, Jeff Sims, and Heinrich Carberg are 3 wildly different quarterbacks. And Nebraska's had to employ an offense for all 3 of them for at least one full game.
Schaefer, want to flip over to the other side of the ball. We're talking with Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. You mentioned we're talking about Satterfield. Let's talk about Tony White, the defensive coordinator. Rule talked about yesterday how he's, fielded some, at least a call from a search firm and kind of was advocating for his guy to get that job. What level of, I guess, concern do you have about Tony White being here next year or not?
If it was like on a scale of 10, I'm probably at a 4, I think, right now.
Okay.
Which is maybe lower than where other people might be, but I look at it like this. I don't think he's going to go back to Syracuse. I think that, there was an attempt to get out of that situation for a reason, to take, what a lot of people would have viewed as a lateral job to a degree. Obviously, you're going to make a lot more money, so there's nothing lateral about the contract he got from Nebraska. But he's still a defensive coordinator for sort of a team that in recent history is, kind of a shoulder shrug. So there's a reason he came to Nebraska from Syracuse. So I'm less concerned about that opening. And then you look at the San Diego State situation, and it is a job that he has a lot of love for. It's where he grew up as a coach. He held a lot of positions over there. I mean, recruiting coordinator, working all the way up to, I believe he was calling defensive plays at one point, in his career before moving on to Arizona State. That's actually where I met Tony White when he was out there at San Diego State, and we were both at an Augustus Hawkins game watching names like Joseph Smith and or Joseph Lewis, excuse me, and other fabled Nebraska recruits of yesteryear. He's just one of those guys that I think being out there on the West Coast is going to be super appealing, but I think the job has to make sense. I would actually have more concern, though I don't think they have the money to be able to do this, if UCLA's next coach went heavily at Tony White, knowing what he did in the Big Ten and knowing that UCLA is transitioning to the Big Ten, and that's his alma mater. That's a school that I could see, but I also don't know that it makes sense for him to make that move right now either, because of the way that he has things kind of set up with Nebraska too. But then you look at it, Nebraska's schedule gets a lot harder next year. So is now the time to jump? I thought the conversation that Matt Rule had in the front of that room was one of the more interesting looks we've ever had from a head coach about this process. And I truly do appreciate that. I mean, it has been a weird season. You've been up and down in terms of trust of what you think of Matt Rule, but it seems like they have a coach that genuinely thinks about everything, that thinks about his staff, that cares at a high level. And I think that is rewarded by loyalty and great effort and everything else. And it was just a really unique look. I appreciated being able to kind of see behind the curtain in that sort of situation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was applauding him for the stuff that he was saying, not just about Tony White, but just about, you mentioned it, like with spending, and he kind of played dad in that moment of like, hey, make sure you're making the right decision before you take this job and move across the state, or before you go to school at this university, right? Like it seemed like a very dad-like moment, but that's at least how Coach Rule acts with this team and this staff, is like he kind of oversees everything and is willing to take the blame on everything, even if it doesn't apply to him.
Yeah, I was thinking in my head of my dad looking at me and wondering if I knew what media people actually made in local markets. Back when I was 18 years old. Didn't quite follow up on that one.
It's all right. My dad still asked me why I took the check I did when I got into it, Schaefer. Okay, let's get you out of here on this, Schaefer. About 2 minutes left. Iowa, Nebraska, officially the lowest all-time total in FBS history at 26.5.
You got to be proud, right?
That's
you
a
just
win.
have to look at this and just own the hell out of it. You have a team across the way that fans around here have mocked routinely for their offense, and yet where does Nebraska find itself when you separate the Quinn Newsome return for a touchdown and you look at the total points scored, and they're really dangerously close right there with Iowa. So, they're right there, I think, averaging in Big Ten play right around 13 points a game. So that's the number. I mean, I'm proud of everyone involved. I don't know what Friday is going to look like. I suspect a lot of punts. I weirdly feel like it's going to be a little anticlimactic for Iowa. So it sort of works in Nebraska's favor, I think, in that regard. Like, I don't know if Iowa still had to punch its ticket to the Big Ten title game.
Yeah,
I think you're going to get a much stronger punch. Not that they aren't going to come out and play well, because I think they will do that too. But it's a different sort of feel to that game. Not that they're going to give it away, but it might have helped Nebraska to a degree that this has already been wrapped up for them. Now, what won't help Nebraska is their inability to stay out of their own way. So they've still got that, and they can be excited about it.
Hey, 5 straight unders in a row for Iowa. 5
hammering that 26.5 under.
We love consistency around here. Just wonderful.
I'm going to drive that thing to 24 if I can.
Yeah, I'm buying down. I'm going to 21.
I'm going to try and get plus money on this thing. Shape, we appreciate it as always. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you again next week.
All right, you guys have a great week.
See you,
That's
man.
our guy, Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. Great stuff there from Schaefer. Coming up next, we've got a little Hurrdat hot seat here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
My job, just like my kids, like my son's deciding where to go to college. I don't tell my son, you have to come to UNL. I said, well, go look at South Dakota State. Go look at, he makes the decision, right? So I look at next week as an unbelievable opportunity to sit down with players and talk about what you see with them and what you see that they can be. I don't know if young people get that enough, right? Like, I'm going to sit down with every single player, walk on scholarship and just talk about, where I see them, what I think they can do, and then have them talk to me. Hey, coach, the good thing for me is, most of these guys I have that kind of relationship with already, where I'm already sitting down with them. But it might be right for someone to go somewhere else. It might be right for someone to sit here and just fight it out and tough it out. So I have those conversations though, Sean, all year long. Like I was, like with Jalen, like Jaden Doss, James Williams last week. We have those conversations all year long with everybody. I'm having them with seniors today. So we'll have them next week. I bet you most guys will want to stay here. It's a really great place to be. It's a really good program to be in. And if it's not right for somebody, then we'll help them with all that we have.
Welcome back. We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We are live on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, on Twitter, YouTube, and of course, we're live from the H&H Chevrolet studio. Want to tell you about our friends at Dingman's Collision Center. They have 4 great Omaha area locations. They've been in business for over 25 years, family owned and operated, and they've been best of Omaha for first place for 18 years running because they have the latest technology. They can work on any make and model, and they give back to their community through their give back program with every car repaired. Give our friends at Dingman's a visit. You can check them out at dingmans.com. All right, it is now time for the Hurrdat Hot Seat.
Nice drum roll.
That was a little drum roll, a little mini drum roll there for you.
I can tell that you aren't very musically inclined.
I actually was in a gospel choir in college.
Did you play the drums?
I did not.
Thank
no.
goodness.
I could sing. I'm not much of a
Ooh, sing for me.
I'm not going to do that.
Sing for me.
Yeah, you're going to make it creepy.
poking the bear.
Do it. I don't play any instrument. I played trombone in middle school.
Ooh.
But that's the last time I played an instrument. So
give me your best trombone sound.
Nice. That's the sad trombone.
I tickled the ivories. I still tickle the ivories.
There you go. Hurrdat Hot Seat. All right. I'll start off here. We'll start with this is a sportsy question-ish. So we asked earlier in the year on a Hurrdat Hot Seat question, what would you give up for a title? But I ask you a much more immediate question now.
What would I give up for a bowl game?
What would you give up for a win against Iowa and a bowl game appearance?
Good one.
Because obviously you'd give up more for a title than you would just a bowl game. But I'm in a position where I'm fairly desperate to win this Iowa game. Going into the offseason.
Dude, I'd give up soda for a month.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I'd give up soda for only a month, though.
A month is a pretty long time.
That's a long time.
Yeah,
like,
especially
that's
for us, because
commitment.
we're pretty addicted.
Oh, it's soda every day.
Yeah, we're pretty addicted to the soda. That's a good one. I don't think our bosses would like this very much, but I would give up social media for a month. And I'm on a lot.
Your phone tells you every week, hey, screen time, you're on way too long.
Pretty much. I think I would give up. I couldn't give up phone in general because I got to be able to communicate like text messages and actual phone calls.
Yeah, but not getting on Twitter would
be really hard.
That would suck.
Especially because that's during the Iowa game. People know how much I tweet
man.
During the Iowa game.
Wait, how long did you say, a month?
I would do a month.
Dude, that's coaching carousel for you.
I know.
That's a big one.
I would be Googling so much because Twitter's like where you live.
Who are the top candidates for the UCLA job?
Give me coaching news.
Tony White updated coaching search.
Yeah, that would be.
Could you just do it for the rest of the month? I mean, that's a little shorter.
No, listen, I'm trying to
the
get
rest of the month.
I'm trying to get a bowl game.
I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to help you out, my man.
I'm trying to get a bowl game here. I'm desperate for a bowl game. I don't want to go through an off season 5-7 on 4 straight losses. Like, I need that bowl game. Let's do it. What's your first one?
Dave goes, you're clearly willing to sacrifice more. Dave, I don't think you realize how much I depend on soda.
I was going to say, here, Dave, let me show you what's going on here.
Well, that's your soda.
I know, but this is, for comparison, this is kind of what we have in the soda situation. Andrew is not terribly different from me in his need for soda. So it's pretty aggressive. It's a lot.
Like, if I had to give up soda, and when I say I give up soda, like, I don't drink other forms of caffeine other than 1 cup of coffee in the morning. Like, I don't drink energy drinks.
I don't drink other forms of liquid for the most part. Like, I don't drink water. I don't drink.
You're weird and don't like water.
I think water's gross.
Yeah, that's kind of nuts. Like, I don't drink Gatorade like throughout the day. Like, the only 2 things I drink, outside of that 1 cup of coffee in the morning, is water and soda.
Yeah,
water and soda. So if I had to give up soda,
yeah,
and I had to be like Amazing Daniel, and he said after a month it might make me quit. I wish, because my body would just feel better.
Yeah,
like I remember when I was recovering from COVID and I only could drink water. Like, dude, it's amazing how good your body feels when you only fill it with water. It's amazing.
You know what's funny is I stopped drinking soda a few different times throughout my life, and I didn't feel any different. Everybody would tell these stories about how good you feel, and I believe them. And so I was like, okay, like I switched to like green tea one time. One time I just did water.
Tea's
one
not
time
for me either. I'll drink unsweet tea, but it's not like, hey, I'm at a restaurant, I'm ordering that or water.
Yeah.
No, it's soda or water.
Like, because green tea is supposed to be good for you. So I switched to green tea, or I would switch to water and coffee. And usually I put the little flavor packets in because I hate the taste of water. But I've never felt any different. I was like, if I don't feel any better, why would I stop?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if I didn't feel any better, why would I be like, yeah, I'm going to give up this thing that I enjoy to not feel any different? Not going to do it.
Shane, will you play that clip I had you store for me for today?
Who is your favorite Husker volleyball player?
My favorite player is Andy Jackson, and I like her because her slides are so good.
Shane, can you pause it real fast?
Why is that?
So the reason I'm playing this clip, it leads into my question for you. This is a clip that Anna Bellinghausen and the Hurrdat Sports team put together at a Nebraska volleyball match, asking young girls why they like Nebraska volleyball, who their favorite player is, etc. Okay, continue.
Okay, I'll restart it.
Who is your favorite Husker volleyball player?
My favorite player is Andy Jackson, and I like her because her slides are so good. Andy Jackson.
Why is that?
Because she's awesome. Big Alec.
And why is that?
She's just she's one of my favorite blockers.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
A volleyball player. Volleyball player. Nebraska volleyball player.
Who is your favorite Husker volleyball player?
Lexi Rodriguez. Lexi Rodriguez. Lexi Rodriguez.
Why is she your favorite?
Because I want to be a libero, and she's and short people take to do it, and you have to put a lot of pressure into it because she's always out there.
She's really good. What's your favorite part about watching Husker volleyball?
They always get so much good touches on the ball, and it's one of my favorite parts about volleyball. It's so exciting, and we're number one.
Why do you like watching Husker volleyball?
Because we're Nebraska.
Because we're Nebraska. What a great final line there. Excellent video put together by AB. Really put you in your feels. The reason I wanted to play that clip, though, Ravi, wasn't because it had kids in it and you just like kids, and I wanted to prove to you why kids are awesome. I wanted to ask, who inspired you to want to play sports as a kid?
Ooh, I mean, my answer's pretty cliche, I think, but
maybe take out your parents in this scenario.
Yeah, no, not my parents.
And do like an athlete.
Yeah.
I should say, what athlete inspired you to want to play sports?
It's funny because neither one of my parents are into sports, so I'm kind of an outlier in my family in that way. I kind of just got into it because of my friends and on my own. But honestly, the answer is probably Michael Jordan. Like, one of my very first memories of watching a sporting event. I've told the story about the first football game I ever watched was the Nebraska winning the championship in the Orange Bowl, but I had started watching NBA basketball before that. And I remember the 93 finals against Phoenix and just being obsessed with Michael Jordan and wanting to go out and like try and recreate the shots that he would make in the driveway and stuff like that. So
5,
right, yeah, you're like doing the countdown, you're like spinning the ball to yourself and kind of trying to do like the fadeaway.
And then you miss, and you're like, there's still time
left.
left.
And you're like
3.2
like you did the tenth of a second. So I mean, it's cliche, but I mean, it's probably Michael Jordan.
For me, I was kind of all around the board, but I'd probably say Albert Pujols.
Okay,
he was the superstar in St. Louis when I was a kid. It then turned into John Jay because I was a center fielder and I got to meet John Jay at the mall one time.
Sure.
So that was cool. But I'd probably start with Albert Pujols. Like that, I wanted to play baseball. He's somebody that I wanted to emulate.
All right, more Hurrdat Hot Seat coming up next.
Albert Pujols. We will be back. We will be back.
Gets the snap out of the pistol. Hands to Travion Henderson. Straight ahead he goes. Now swings it out to the left. Gets to his own 40. Henderson to the 50. Henderson go for territory. Left side to the 30. He's got a blocker to the 20. To the 10, to the 5, and into the end zone goes Travion Henderson on a 75-yard touchdown run for the Buckeyes on the first play from scrimmage in the third quarter.
Radio.
Now will Purdue get a little conservative offensively? They have an 8-point lead with 3:52 to play. No, Colvin's going to shoot a three. Triple time! Miles Colvin says conservative.
Sports Radio.
Now will Purdue get a little conservative. Stromer saved it inbounds to Purdue. Purdue with a 5-on-4.
We will be back.
Deshaun Jones, 40 seconds left. Sean Jones open three. Good. Oh, he hit it.
That's big there.
Huge.
Newton gives it in the right corner to Caravan. Time running out. Got to shoot it. Alex fires, and he hit another one.
Deshaun Jones, 40 seconds.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
There's a beat drop as we wrap up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I want to tell you about our friends at Pratt Dental. Go to Pratt Dental in North Platte, Nebraska for the BioClear method. Dr. Pratt was the first dentist in Nebraska certified for that service. The BioClear method and modern smile design can correct many aesthetic dilemmas in a permanent and less invasive manner than traditional treatments such as crowns. Give Pratt Dental a call at 308-221-2800. Pratt Dental, creating healthy smiles. All right, time to continue on our Hurrdat hot seat. Let's do it. All right, so we both just did one that time, right?
Yeah, we only ever get one in
the first. Yeah,
we get two. You said the first time we were going to do this, like, hey, you have 4 questions ready.
Yeah,
we're never going to touch 4 questions.
No,
each.
No matter how much time I give us, we never get to 4
we
questions.
We could do that in the whole show, and we wouldn't get all 8 questions.
Probably not.
Let's do it.
Let's see which one I want to do here. Would you rather? Ooh. This is a very specific to you.
Okay.
Would you rather host a nationally televised game show?
Yep. That one.
Or host a nationally syndicated radio show?
Ooh, good one. Good one. I'd rather do the game show.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
I thought
that's just me.
That's like in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, and look, if someday you hear me on the national airwaves on ESPN or whatever,
yeah.
MLB network radio, like things like that. Like that would be insane.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
Like,
right.
You're
this
on a
is
serious,
not to say
you're
that,
on a serious station. Like if I did, like, there's a fantasy fantasy sports radio station on Sirius XM. Like if I was on that someday,
yeah.
All right, twist my arm, right? But in any, like if I could be Pat Sajak, if I could be the Wheel of Fortune host, hands down. Like I don't need to be Family Feud. I'm not as I don't know if I'm as quick as Steve Harvey, and I think Steve Harvey can play into things a little bit more than I can, just because he is.
But I feel like
Steve
you'd
Harvey.
be a good Price is Right, Wheel of Fortune.
Let's Make a Deal.
Let's Make a Deal be a good one. Or you they've got some of those random weird ones that
could never do Jeopardy. I am not smart enough for Jeopardy.
Well, the nice thing about Jeopardy is your host and you got the answers right there.
No, guys, it's actually onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is that answer, and that's an easy.
Well, and they tape all those shows, so then you get a sabbatical for 2 months.
That's
2
the
months
best
out
part.
of the end of the year.
Pat Sajak works a month a year.
Yep, because they record for a weekend straight of he may work 10-hour days on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But they record.
Yeah.
What would that be? Because it's half an hour episodes. Well, technically it's only 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So they probably get 3 episodes in. So that would be 90 episodes in a weekend. I bet that's roughly what they do.
I think legitimately, because I think I've heard about an interview. Pat Sajak works a month a year. They work, they work really hard for that month, but he just gets the rest of the year off. Kind of does whatever he wants, which is not a terrible gig if you're going game show.
So I Wheel of Fortune, Let's Make a Deal, Price is Right, hands down. Or if there was a new game show starting,
some of the weird ones that they have Dwayne Wade host. What was it, the Cube or something? Was one.
Or
there's
a
pyramid
ball drop that LeBron invested into.
So
if there's a new game Let's Play Bamboozle, Joey and Friends, that would be that's right up my alley.
I could see you being the Bamboozle guy.
All right, Chandler. Would you like to spin the wheel of mayhem?
R.I.P. to our guy,
pick
Chandler.
a Wicked Wango card.
All right, what's your next one?
All right, for you. And I'll comment on it too, but it doesn't have to be as long. But if you could do anything else in life that wasn't your dream job, so it kind of plays off of what you were just talking about. Money being no problem.
Okay.
What is one industry or skill that you'd like to learn more about?
Ooh, that's interesting.
Because even if you were hey, I want to be a farmer, some farmers make a ton of money.
Sure, yeah.
Some, live off,
smaller family farms.
Live off the land, right? Yeah. What is it for you?
That's an interesting question. Do you have one? Because I'm going to have to think about this.
I do. So I would love to be a pilot.
Oh yeah, I hate flying, so that would not be for me.
I just I like the control aspect of it, and I think it's just fascinating being in the cockpit and looking at all the buttons and being
sure.
I don't know what any of this means, but if I did, this would be really cool. And
sure.
Planes low key fly themselves. You just have to really worry about the takeoff and landing.
Yeah.
But I think that would be just super cool. I love to travel, and if I'm traveling, even if I'm driving home, I want to be the driver.
Yeah.
In any case, if I'm driving to
you
Kansas
being
City,
in control of
to
of
cover
the
Creighton on Wednesday, I would want to be the driver, like Mike Sauter is to Jacob Padilla.
Yeah.
So that's why, that's something I always wanted to do. And I'm cool with even a small plane.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be a Boeing 747.
You're cool being one of the little private jet pilots. Mm-hmm. And I actually know a guy that does that, and he's got a pretty good gig. I can't remember who he works for, but he works for one of the kind of one of those private jet companies that you kind of rent out or whatever. And he's got a pretty good deal. But the one that came to mind, and this is fairly recent for me, I would kind of like to learn about being a sommelier. So it's a wine expert. They're called sommeliers.
Never. You could have asked me. You could have given me 3 options, and I never would have gotten there.
They're the people that can
my last choice.
Identify the region that a wine comes from just by tasting it, and it's really fascinating because it and this is just in the last couple of years I've gotten way more into wine. I think it's something that happens in your mid-30s because I remember Nick Baugh talking about it on his podcast where he's I'm kind of into, I think I'm a wine guy now. And it's fascinating though, because there's so many different varieties and there's just so much information about each wine. And if you go to a nice restaurant and they'll have a sommelier and they'll kind of tell you about the region and how it was grown and stuff. I just find it super fascinating.
Amazing Daniel cracking me up on the stream because that's where my head went first. He goes, it's Ravi, I think it's Somali and you have to be born there.
No, I'm not trying to like Captain Phillips this thing like, hey, I'm the captain now. No, sommelier. It's a wine expert,
like,
Daniel.
Excuse you? Bless you.
Okay.
Right, give me another.
My next one. All right. If you could, this is a Nebraska football one. If you could pick either keeping Tony White,
okay,
or you can have a quarterback that puts up either the same or equivalent stats to what Chubba Purdy did against Wisconsin every single week. No better, no worse. Mm-hmm. So you're talking, let me bring up his box score here real quick. You're talking about
he had about like 270
total yards. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be 100 rushing and 160 passing, but
it could be 270
basically
passing.
2 touchdowns, 1 turnover, 270 yards of total offense. Or that's what you get every single game. Or you get to keep Tony White. You could have a better quarterback than that. You could have a worse quarterback than that. We don't know. What are you choosing?
Is that the ceiling or is that the floor for the quarterback?
For the Chubba
like
Purdy?
270, is that the floor?
That is what you get every single game.
So he never goes above it.
Never goes above it.
Yeah, I'll take Tony White.
See, that's kind of what I think too. But there's a part of me that's like, if you get 270 yards of total offense, 2 touchdowns and 1 turnover from your quarterback every single game, and you know that's what you're getting, I feel like you could build a winning team around that. Now, you probably still have a ceiling, right? Mm-hmm. But I do still think I lean Tony White because I'm an optimist, and I think you could do better.
You look at this roster and of quarterbacks, and I don't want to take away, these guys' talent because they got here for a reason, but there are other D1 quarterbacks that would come into the room right now and start.
And be better. Absolutely.
Right now and start.
Yeah, there's backups at other places that would start right now.
Yeah, I'm not dipping down and saying they don't belong at this level.
Right.
But they are backups in a starting role. That's what all 3 quarterbacks
or they'd be like
are.
A group of 5 guy or something like that. But they're not for what Nebraska needs them to be. Nebraska doesn't have that guy in the room right now.
And so because of that, I'll take the gamble of going into the transfer portal and going through another Jeff Sims experience.
Yeah.
If I keep Tony White.
Sure.
Because I have a hard time believing back-to-back years you're going to have another Jeff Sims experience.
I mean, you would hope not, but I you look at the guys that come out of the transfer portal, and sometimes you get a Jordan Travis, like Florida State did from Louisville, but it took him a year and a half to look really good. Sometimes you get a Jeff Sims where you're like, what were we doing here? What who thought this was a good idea? So it is a crapshoot, but I think I agree. I think I keep Tony White.
What's one video game you grew up on that if you had the opportunity to play it all night long drinking Shane's Mountain Dew Code Red, it'd be the best all-nighter you've ever pulled?
Ooh.
This is a grew up on game. So don't just say Madden 23.
Yeah, for sure. There's only 2 options for me. There's one when I was a little younger and then one that was very prominent when I was in high school. Well, there's 3 options for me. So the OG is GoldenEye on N64.
That's a good one.
That's one of the elite games of all time. That's when I was younger. That was elementary school. So that would be definitely an option. I was never quite as into Halo as some of my friends were, but the original Halo was a super good time. You do these kind of, I didn't do a ton of these, but you do these kind of LAN parties because they weren't connected to the internet yet. So you'd have 4 TVs set up in a basement and all have them hardwired together. That was super fun. Or me and my buddy were obsessed with NCAA football.
That's a good one.
Absolutely. And we played that for hours and hours every single day over the course of the summers and stuff like that. So one of those 3 for sure. For nostalgia, I'm probably going to go GoldenEye.
It's weird because people may think I'm going to say a sport video game because I grew up on Slugfest. Slugfest 2004 was one of my favorite games. You mentioned NCAA football. The one I'm going to stick with, though, Guitar Hero.
Oh, dude, I loved Guitar Hero.
Guitar Hero would be where I sit because I could play that all night and just go up and down the playlist.
I loved that game.
And, go from medium to hard to expert or from hard to expert. If I picked up a guitar today, I probably could do expert or hard again.
We've got John Fanta coming up next. Talk college basketball.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Now will Purdue get a little conservative offensively? They have an 8-point lead with 3:52 to play. No, Colvin's going to shoot a three. Triple time! Miles Colvin says conservative, schmervative.
Newton gives it in the right corner to Caravan. Time running out. Got to shoot it. Alex fires, and he hit another one.
To Sean Jones. 40 seconds left. Sean Jones open three. Good.
Wow.
He hit it.
That's big there.
Huge.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me as well. Shane, do we have John yet?
He's here.
Yes, he is.
Oh, there he is.
He's on the stream.
Our guy, John Fanta. He covers college basketball on Fox Sports as well as contributes to the Field of 68. John Fanta, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you? It's great to be with you. Happy Thanksgiving week.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving to you, too. Is that a gamer chair? Are you sitting in a chair meant for gaming?
Welcome to Hurrdat.
I don't know. My wife got it for me, and it's comfortable. I'm not much of a I'm not a gamer these days, but I'll tell you what, this office chair is very comfy. I don't know what.
Just looks like a gaming
chair. It does. The most comfortable office chairs are gamer chairs, so I wouldn't be surprised. But because those guys, they don't just sit there for 8 hours a day. They sit there for, they go on those like 24-hour binges. So you gotta be comfy in your chair there.
Sorry, that's my head going squirrel on you, John.
I gotcha. Hey, we've all We've all been there I wish I was 12 and was doing the Madden tournament on Thanksgiving.
Amen.
That's what I really want this week.
Instead, you're what? You're out in New York City this week, is that right?
Yeah, New Jersey's home for me. Home for me, so North Jersey, and we're staying out here in Jersey for the Thanksgiving holiday before I get back to it on Black Friday for what should be a doozy. Between UConn and Manhattan on FS1 as the Huskies look the part, guys. The reigning national champions are not slowing down. That's for sure.
Yeah, John, and that's not, I wouldn't say surprising to me, but I did want to see it this year from UConn, right? Because they did lose some pretty key pieces. Obviously, Hawkins, Jackson, you lose Sanogo as well. Those are three huge pieces to what they did last year. It seemed like people just kind of assumed that they'd be fine, and it looks like they are. But what have you seen from them that has backed up those assumptions?
Well, I think there's a confidence factor. That's the first thing, is that this group, Dan Hurley is a very momentum-based guy. He's got all the momentum in the world right now, and his team's playing with that. So much of this game right at this stage of the season, nor alone in March, but it's mental. It's how you come out and set the tone. So UConn didn't need anybody to get them to believe. They already believe when you win a national championship. And the pieces that you have back played major roles on the team, not as large as the role of Jordan Hawkins, Andre Jackson, and Adama Sanogo. But the fact is, guys, Alex Karaban's beyond his years. This sophomore right now is playing like a seasoned vet, like a fourth or fifth year guy. He's a stretch four who last night had 20 points. Texas gets within 4 of UConn, and Karaban makes 3 straight shots. Donovan Klingen's beyond his years as well. But to me, what I think has stood out to me the most about Connecticut is how much of a jump Samson Johnson has taken. This is a guy, he's a junior from the country of Togo. Has some ties with Adama Sanogo, who is from Mali. They knew of each other well. There's a bit of a connection there. UConn clearly has the kind of a recruiting side there, bringing in those kids. And they bring in Samson Johnson, and through the first 2 years of his career, he's been a non-factor. He had played in 25 combined games. He might have averaged a bucket a game. Last night in the Empire Classic Championship game, I thought he won UConn the game. He had 15 points. He had 7 rebounds. He had a couple of nasty dunks. What stands out to me the most about Connecticut is the player development. And the fact that, I'll tell you guys a story. After the game, Dan Hurley told me that while UConn was going on a national championship run, other college basketball teams, coaches, were contacting Samson Johnson trying to convince him to enter the transfer portal. Hurley and staff had to re-recruit Johnson as they're going for a national title. By re-recruiting him, he is now a really, really important piece to the reigning national champions. Confidence, player development, roster retainment, very important to the whole formula. Right now in college hoops, if you have roster continuity, you've got gold.
John, you mentioned being up in Jersey. I'm sure you also wish you could be down in Maui, covering some really good college basketball down there. You have the top 4 teams, right? Moving on to the semifinals. Yeah. I mean, some really good basketball to come. You talk about roster continuity, even depth. One of the teams down there showed that their depth really matters this season, and that's Marquette.
That is Marquette. And last night, they won a game that they might have lost 7 or 8 times out of 10. But when you've got belief, when you've won 29 games the year before, you fight. And you see Marquette won a Mick Cronin-style game in their Maui Invitational opener. I thought that Sebastian Mack was terrific for UCLA, Lazar Stefanovic as well. They didn't get the performance that I think they would have liked to get last night in Berke Boyuktunjel. Yes, that's the pronunciation of that.
I'll trust you. I wasn't going to mess with it.
Boyuktunjel did not have a made field goal, but the UCLA is better. Like, they're better than people are saying. They're good. They're a good team. rankings this time of year, guys, outside the top 8 to 9 teams, they don't mean a whole lot. Everybody's trying to figure it out. Marquette had a lot of trouble figuring it out last night. And if David Joplin doesn't hit 5 threes, they're not even in the game.
Yeah.
He kept them in the game. And he takes over for Olivier Maxence Prosper. Being a stretch 4 in Marquette system is really good because at some point a defense has to pick their poison. And you don't want Kolek to beat you. You don't want Oso Ighodaro to beat you, and we'll get to him in a second. So you got to pick your poison. Joplin gets open shots. He made them. Oso Ighodaro sparked the run. When UCLA goes up by 12, we're 5 minutes into the second half. UCLA's up by 12. How many times has Mick Cronin lost a 12-point lead with 15 minutes on the clock?
Not often.
You could probably count it on both hands, yeah.
Not often. Ighodaro had a dunk to start the run, had a dunk, a nasty dunk, to give Marquette the lead. And once that happened, they really just hung on. And guys, they're down by 1 late, and Sean Jones, who's a sophomore, who hit 1 3 on the entire season thus far, knocks down a cold-blooded triple straight away. That's guts. That's toughness. That is believing. That's culture. I mean, I got to tell you, if I'm Sean Jones, the majority of a player like that in college hoops is scared to take that shot and does not take it. He was wide open for good reason. If I'm UCLA and that's what's beating me, I'm taking it. Credit to him.
Taking it on the chin.
Credit to him. He stepped up and hit a gravy train of a 3.
You could make an argument that it's irrational confidence, but it worked out for Marquette that time for sure. Plenty of games have been won on big stages from guys with irrational confidence. So that certainly helped out Marquette there. Sticking in the Big East real quick, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Creighton while we had you here. As you've seen them through their first handful of games this year, better, worse, or about what you thought?
About what I thought, and that's a really good team, to a great team. And I want to see them shore some things up on the defensive end of the floor a little bit. I thought that defensively they struggled with Iowa, who's good on the offensive side, but I thought that Creighton got to the point in the game, guys, where they went up double figures, I think, early in that second half. But then I thought that they got a little bit complacent on the defensive end and allowed Iowa to sort of hang around. Now, here's the thing. You have to be harsh because I consider them a Final Four contender. But I like this team. I mean, and I got to tell you, I love this team. I mean, I think they can win the Big East. I think they can win the national championship, as we talked about in the preseason. And the reason for that is they have a first-round pick and a guy that right now I would consider, I think he's got lottery upside. Yeah, you heard it. Trey Alexander.
Yep.
Trey Alexander is playing like a National Player of the Year candidate. I mean, near triple-double last week. You see what he did then. He followed it up with a 20.8 assist, 7 rebound performance against Texas Southern. I mean, the guy's got 17 assists in his last 2 games. That's just terrific.
Yeah.
And, this is also illustrative of fit. Stephen Ashworth knows that when he gives up the ball, he may not get it back, and he's okay with that. Trey Alexander in this offense is able to be the best version of himself. So as much as I think now looking back at it in retrospect, you can understand why Ryan Nembhard elected for a change in home. This is why Trey Alexander elected to stay at Creighton. He's never going to be in a better role on a team than he is right now at Creighton. And I got to give credit to Baylor Shireman because I think Baylor realizes that, and Baylor embraces what he does well. They have a great awareness of who they are. And as they continue to get better, the other thing is, you know what I'll say is better than I thought? Their bench. Their bench is better than I thought. I didn't think this early their bench would be this good. Fred King against Iowa was extremely encouraging. That's huge. That's huge for their upside. I want to see Isaac Trout continue to grow in his role. Fran Farabello is an X factor for this team. Creighton has all the pieces. And it's why by the end of this week that they, in my mind, they will have won the Hall of Fame Classic here between Wednesday and Thursday. They're in Kansas City. They love playing there. They'll have a great crowd. Oklahoma stayed in the Big East Big 12 battle. They should win that game. I mean, it is very feasible that the Creighton Blue Jays go to Nebraska December 3rd as an undefeated team. What a script that would be for that game.
John, well, speaking of undefeated teams, let's talk about the other state school, the team that you predicted will go dancing, and it was your bold prediction, and that's Nebraska. You mentioned that game. Could Nebraska also be undefeated going into that game at Creighton, for one? And two, is this what you expected out of Nebraska so early?
Well, this is what I expected, and frankly, they should have come out and won these games. Now, they beat a Stony Brook team that I had against St. John's, and they beat them by 21. They handled Oregon State. It was a bottom-end Pac-12 team, but you still have to win, and they did. Mm-hmm. So they've won back-to-back games by a final score of 84-63. That means you're doing something right on both ends of the floor. It's early, but there's a lot of teams that are having scares, right? Nebraska's not. Duquesne has improved, but Nebraska should be able to get through that game and win. Cal State Fullerton, you're right. That is a battle of unbeatens. Mm-hmm. That Creighton, Nebraska in basketball this year, they're playing volleyball and women's basketball. They're certainly not playing in football, but in basketball, that is a battle of unbeatens waiting to happen. And I'll tell you what, I mean, for me, when I look at this team, Keisei Tominaga does a good amount for them, but what stands out to me is what Bryce Williams and Rink Mast are doing. They've got a combined 27 assists through the first 5 games of the season. All right. And I think that for this team, for Tominaga and CJ Wilcher to both have 7 threes apiece, for Bryce Williams to be shooting it at the level he is. Bryce Williams is shooting 44% from three-point territory. So I'll tell you what, guys, I like this team. I think that Fred Hoiberg now has a group that they understand who they are. They've got a lot of experience. That's never a bad thing to have. And, you know, as Juwan Gary continues to get better as the year goes on, I mean, 8 of 11 against Stony Brook. He had 19 points in that game. As I look at Nebraska, I see balance. I see a superstar in Tominaga. And I see a team that can do some damage in the Big Ten, because when you've got old dudes, you're not fazed by anything. And they're top 50 in KenPom offense and KenPom defense. That means that there's complementary play going on. KenPom can sometimes be thrown off early, but Nebraska's 45th in that metric. And I think they're going to continue to hang around there. And I see the Nebraska Cornhuskers dancing this year. I think that this team's being slept on nationally, but if you're in Nebraska, I'll tell you, you should be very excited. This could be a banner year in college hoops in the area.
John, I want to stay in the Big Ten for a minute. You mentioned some teams that have had scares and some have that just taken outright losses. You know, I'm looking at like a Michigan State team that's taken a couple losses already. I'm looking at a Wisconsin team that's taken a couple losses already. And then you've got a team in Purdue that I've got a really interesting eye on because of how their season went last year. It's not that I'm so much worried about how they're put together or how they've played this year, but some of those teams in the Big Ten, are they what you thought they would be? How's the Big Ten shaping up early on in your mind?
Well, I would say that if you're the Big Ten, it's discouraging to see Michigan State struggle out of the gates, and now they have a big Thanksgiving Day game against Arizona, and they're outmatched on paper in that game. So if they suffer a third loss, yeah, they've tested themselves, but at some point you got to break through and get a win.
Yeah.
Disappointments. Indiana could have very well lost to Louisville last night. Now they hung on, but I don't like Indiana very much. I mean, they don't have perimeter shooting. There's no perimeter shooting threat on that team.
Yeah.
There's none. You're Indiana. How do you not have a 3-point shooter? I mean, it's clear that they don't have one. Wisconsin, that was a big result last night for them. They blew out Virginia. They didn't beat Virginia. They blew them out. That's more like it for Wisconsin. Michigan, I want to give them their flowers. I was extremely impressed with them against St. John's. And what do? They lose to Long Beach State. They overlooked him for Memphis. That's not good. Now, Long Beach State won't kill you. Long Beach State looks like they're going to be one of the better teams in their league. But still, Michigan has a massive game against Memphis on Wednesday. Purdue has a huge game today against Tennessee. For the sake of the Big Ten really could use that game because you don't want to be stuck saying, the problem with the Big Ten is outside of Purdue, who's a national title contender in that league? Illinois had an opportunity against Marquette at home, pretty flaky in that one, inconsistent on that on both ends of the floor. Iowa's great offensively, but not good defensively. Ohio State, I still think could be an X factor to this league. It's early, but I like what Chris Holtmann has going. But that's why I'm kind of bullish, guys, on Nebraska because Nebraska is the Big Ten's most experienced team.
Yeah.
And this league is not, is this league great? It's not great. It's solid to good. Could it accumulate six NCAA tournament bids? Yes, of course. When you have 14 teams in your league, you better be able to get 5 or 6 in a 68-team tournament. So I think that the league, is it in a nightmare mode? No, it's too early to say that. I'm not ready to write anything off or say this or say, but I am concerned. Michigan State's poor start is rough. And right now, if Michigan State didn't have their name brand, I don't think they would be ranked. They are. They are.
Not at all. No.
But outside of you have 2 ranked teams in this league. 2.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's it certainly appears to be a down year for the Big Ten. On a national scale, you mentioned some of the Maui games. You mentioned Purdue and Tennessee. Is there, I don't know, you're in New York. Are there games this weekend? What are the games that you're looking forward to most this weekend, just from a matchup standpoint?
Well, it's today. This is the best multi-team event semifinal lineup that we've ever seen in college basketball.
Hands down.
Ever. At 8 o'clock, you get number 2 Purdue, number 7 Tennessee. Braden Smith on one side, Zakai Ziegler back from his ACL injury on the other. Dalton Connect for Tennessee, really leading them as a stretch 4. Zach Edey for Purdue. Can Purdue generate enough on the perimeter? Can Tennessee generate enough on the perimeter? I'm fascinated to see how Rick Barnes handles Zach Edey defensively and what they do, what their approach is. My approach is if Edey gets 30, that's fine. Cut off the pieces on the perimeter. Cut off those 3-point shooters. If Purdue's knocking down threes, they win this game. It's a toss-up. I'm going to give Braden Smith and Purdue a slight edge to win. The other game is number 1 Kansas versus number 4 Marquette.
That's the one I'm excited about.
I can't wait. Kansas will not guard Marquette the way that UCLA guarded Marquette. That was a particularly difficult test for Marquette in terms of what UCLA presented defensively. Kansas and Marquette match up really well with each other. Kansas has to do the same thing. They've got to feed Hunter Dickinson. Try to get Iguodaro in some foul trouble. But there is a big thing in this game, okay? Marquette has more 3-point shooting than Kansas. Kansas, if DeJuan Harris isn't making threes, Kansas doesn't have great perimeter threats. I'm going to give the slight edge to Kansas. You know why? Because of how much Marquette had to do last night to win. And Kansas got to play Chaminade. I think that makes a difference tonight. I really do. But guys, I don't think Kansas rolls to some blowout win. I'd be surprised. Marquette's got to play looser. They played way too tight last night, and they need Cam Jones to get going. If Cam Jones and Tyler Kolek are going for Marquette, Marquette's going to knock off number 1 tonight. Because their backcourt's better than Kansas's. I know that might be hard for some people to believe, but I'm telling you right now, Marquette's got better guards than Kansas.
Yeah.
John, we got about 2 minutes and 30 seconds here before we have to let you go. One team I wanted to get to is USC, and it's because they have a really young, talented roster, but they also have a popular name returning here soon in Bronny James. What do you make of his remarkable recovery? What do you think he can be at USC, and where do you think USC can go this season with him back in their starting five?
Well, I think that for Bronny, look, he is a winning, high IQ type of player who gets it done on both ends. He values what to do defensively. He's a good passer. He's a good playmaker. The jump shot is an area that needs to continue to grow. But I think that Bronny's stock has continually risen because when he's on the floor, positive things happen in the recruiting circuit. And he can put the ball on the floor and handle it. He understands how to play in an offense. Any defense. He's not a liability on that end. But I want people to temper their expectations. Temper their expectations. This is a guy who's probably the third or fourth best player on this team.
Mm-hmm.
All right? He is not the best player on USC. USC has two players that are clearly the best in Boogie Ellis and Isaiah Collier.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
USC, what can they be? They could be a Sweet 16 type of team. Am I buying them to be further than that? Honestly, I'm not. Because this is a team that I'm uncertain about on the interior, and maybe they will prove me wrong. But I want to see Harrison Ornery, the junior from Australia, continue to get better for this team. He had 9 rebounds in their last game against Brown. I want to see Joshua Morgan step up. But guys, they don't have a lot of ways they can score the ball easily in the interior. If it's not Ellis or Collier for this team right now, Kobe Johnson's solid. They have a couple of interesting pieces. They got DJ Rodman from Washington State, Dennis's son. He did not play in the last game, but they have some interesting pieces.
Mm-hmm.
They lost Reese Dixon Waters in the offseason to San Diego State. But I'll tell you what, I like this team. I think Bronny expectations has to be tempered a little bit. But with Collier and Ellis, you're going to have as two guards that are as good, if not better, than any other matchup in the country. And we all know it's a guards game. But in this version of college basketball, you've got to be able to post and score because it's big men rule in this sport now.
Mm-hmm.
USC has bodies. They don't have a great offensive weapon from 15 feet and in. We'll see if that changes and if it evolves. They have an interesting game against an unbeaten Seton Hall team on Thanksgiving night.
That they
Seton
do.
Seton Hall could be a Big East sleeper. Kadari Richmond is playing very, very well.
John Fanta, that's the GOAT.
Always a pleasure.
On college basketball on Fox. Also contributes to the Field 68. John, we appreciate your time as always. We'll talk to you again soon.
Happy Thanksgiving, guys. Store up on those mashed potatoes.
You too, buddy.
I'll fill them all up.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
My job, just like my kids, like my son's deciding where to go to college. I don't tell my son, you have to come to UNL. I said, well, go look at South Dakota State. Go look at, he makes the decision, right? So I look at next week as an unbelievable opportunity to sit down with players and talk about what you see with them and what you see that they can be. I don't know if young people get that enough, right? Like, I'm going to sit down with every single player, walk on scholarship and just talk about, where I see them, what I think they can do, and then have them talk to me. Hey, coach, the good thing for me is, most of these guys I have that kind of relationship with already, where I'm already sitting down with them. But it might be right for someone to go somewhere else. It might be right for someone to sit here and just fight it out and tough it out. So I have those conversations though, Sean, all year long. Like like with Jalen, like Jaden Doss, James Williams last week. We have those conversations all year long with everybody. I'm having them with seniors today. So we'll have them next week. I bet you most guys will want to stay here. It's a really great place to be. It's a really good program to be in. And if it's not right for somebody, then we'll help them with all that we have.
Welcome back. Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. And for this third hour, we're on KFOR in Lincoln as well. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me.
Oh, hey, man.
Hey, what's going on? Really good stuff from John Fanta last segment. Always love talking to John.
He's just such a junkie.
He is. He's a hoops junkie, and he's fun to talk to. And, I wanted to ask him what his Thanksgiving, perfect Thanksgiving meal was, but we run out of time because we like talking to him too much. That's okay, though. That's a good.
He's one of those that you could just talk the whole show.
Oh, yeah. That's a good problem to have. But Rule had some really interesting things, as you heard the clip that Shane played coming back. Had some super interesting things to say. He covered a lot of ground yesterday. It was another one of those 35-minuters.
36-23, I think.
But who's counting?
Yeah.
Thank you, Shane. And, it was one of those, he covered a lot of ground, everything from the Wisconsin game to his time management. Then he got a little philosophical on us as well, as he tends to do, talking about the transfer portal and how he wants to build this thing. And there was a lot in there. One of the things that really stuck out to me, though, was kind of his, we talked about this a little bit earlier, sort of the fatherly advice to Tony White. We were talking about it with Schaefer. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting, because I don't think he was just talking about Tony White when he was saying these things about what jobs to take, right? He said, don't take a job where the expectations outweigh the commitment. And I think you get that a lot of places. Guys are desperate to get their first head coaching job, especially if it's a Power 5 offer. And you look and UCLA is a really good example. We were talking about this yesterday, right? Where they don't have a ton of resources. They are like broke, and they have this expectation to win more than Chip Kelly currently is. It's like, okay, but what support are they offering in order to try and reach that, right? Because the way it looks right now, 7, 8, 9 wins is pretty good for the level of commitment UCLA is putting in. Obviously, Tony White played there. Maybe that's a little message to Coach Rule to Tony White from Coach Rule. But I also think he was maybe talking about why he took the Nebraska job too, like in the back of his head, as opposed to, he was up for the Auburn job. Mm-hmm. He was up for, I think he said multiple SEC jobs when he got hired last year. And I think he was kind of talking to us and being like, hey, I took this job because the commitment to winning matches the expectations to win. And that's a huge deal because there's so many places where that is not the case, where they expect big time results, but they do not put big time commitment to it, whether it's resources, whether it's infrastructure, talk about facilities, NIL, all this stuff now.
And Nebraska's getting there.
And Nebraska, they're committed to getting there is the important part. Whatever they don't have now, we're talking about a $450 million stadium renovation. We're talking about they just opened the new football facility. We're talking about they're getting the NIL. I mean, the money for the NIL is there. They're trying to get it organized, right? They're trying to get it moving in the right direction. They're committed to everything you need to do to win at the level they expect you to win at. And I think that's why Matt Rule is here more than anything.
Well, yeah, because
you have to take a job. Hear me now when I say this. This is deep.
No, we're not going to finish. No, that's exactly why I think Coach Rule kind of brought that analogy up. I wouldn't say it was more for like where they are today.
No,
because spending wise, Nebraska's not where they should be. But the commitment to spending is the key word there. And when he talks to Tony White about different things, because he's been there, done that everywhere. He did that at a small school in Temple. He went then to Big 12 football at Baylor. He went to the NFL. Now he's back in the Big 10. He's done it across the board. So he knows what commitment is here. He knows what it is there. He knows what it is in the NFL. He knows what it is now at Nebraska. But yeah, it's just understanding your next move and kind of being like a chess player and being like maybe 2 or 3 moves ahead of, the school that is trying to bring you in. And so with Tony White in particular, it is a really interesting conversation because I don't think that's an easy conversation to have with anybody, especially when they're in search of that first big head coaching job. And if you see a name brand, whether it's San Diego State or Texas A&M or even Florida International, whatever it is, when you see like the name, it's easy just to kind of reach for it.
Sure. Yeah. Or especially if it's a Power 5 team, Power 5 school, we've seen that with the Kansas job for a bunch of people. We've seen that with, Arkansas has kind of been a wasteland of coaches a few different times. There's a lot of jobs in the Power 5 that are really, really hard and that are maybe not the best move for everyone, depending on where they're at in their career, where that particular school is with their administration and everything like that. But, and it made me think of, because I remember specifically when Matt Rule took the Baylor job and people were kind of like, because he had options, right? And people looked at that and they're like, why on earth would he take that job right now? Because it looked like one of the worst jobs in the country at that moment because of what all had happened. And again, I'm guessing he looked at that situation and said, their commitment to what they want from me matches their expectations. And so he was okay with it. That makes a lot more sense in his decision-making process now to go to Baylor in the first place, because I legitimately remember thinking, Matt Rule is going to get a big job soon. And then so his name starts popping up in different places and it comes out he's going to Baylor. And everybody's just going like, why would you do that to yourself?
People are like, huh?
Yeah. And honestly, it was almost like you almost felt bad for him, because you're like, oh, does he not know what he's getting into? He sees a Big 12 job. He sees Texas recruiting. you kind of go, oh no, does he not know what he's getting into?
Yeah.
And the joke was on.
He's the biggest chess player around.
The joke was on us, right? He knew exactly what he was getting into more than any of the people watching. So I think it's really, you hope that him and Tony White have the relationship where they can have those honest conversations and be like, hey, I want you to move on when the opportunity is right for you.
Well, and that's why when Schaefer brought up Syracuse in the interview and says he just can't imagine him going back there, I 100% agree. Because I talked to Tony at the Team Jack event before the season even started, and I asked him, I said, what's the biggest difference for you from Syracuse to Nebraska already? And he said, the people are much nicer here than they're back at Syracuse. I don't think anybody wants to put themselves back in that situation where they're surrounded around negativity.
Yeah.
When you are surrounded by positivity, more times than not at Nebraska, whether the wins are coming or not.
Yeah.
So that's a job that I think is off the table completely, but it still doesn't shock me that Coach Rule heard from a search firm.
Oh,
said,
absolutely.
Like, hey, man, like Tony White's name is the one people want. Like, what do you have to say about him? Now, I thought what was also cool, too, is the fact that when he brought up in the interview that he couldn't be happier about like the development of where the program is right now, but angrier about the record.
Yeah.
Because, you know, a lot of times when you get coach speak, they'll never admit that the team hasn't
performed at the level that they wanted to.
They're not performing, but he's not somebody to ever like say that. And, you know, it just applies to what we talked about yesterday with like reps are king across the board, and getting these young guys reps right now will pay off. And I know it's a small sample size, but Jalen Petrie's one name that was at Baylor, that was a young player and then developed into a second round pick in the NFL. You have Hassan Reddick, who played a different position. And then, you know, he was a walk-on for one, but then got moved from running back to defensive end. And look where Hassan Reddick has gone. You know, he's a first-round pick. And, like, yes, those are just small pieces. But when Matt Rule was at Carolina, he had like 18 Temple guys on his team, or Temple and Baylor guys. So people go to the NFL. He produces NFL talent. And the earlier the reps come, the better it means for Nebraska by the time year 2 of Rule is here, year 3 of Rule, and especially year 4.
Yeah, well, and, you know, he said something else, kind of going to your point here. He said if you cut open the football program, we're as healthy as a program can be. And I think he means like from a culture standpoint, from a foundation standpoint. And then later it goes into what he said. I couldn't be happier about where we are. I couldn't be angrier about our record. He seems to believe, and I do too, we talked about this before Wisconsin, that from a culture and foundation standpoint, this program's in an excellent place regardless of what happens on Friday. Now, if we get that win on Friday and make
everybody feel better.
Everybody feel just a little bit better about the health of the program. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Tim May to preview Ohio State and Michigan.
We will be back. We will be back. will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Gets the snap out of the pistol, hands to Travion Henderson. Straight ahead he goes, now swings it out to the left. Gets to his own 40, Henderson to the 50. Henderson go for territory, left side to the 30. He's got a blocker to the 20, to the 10, to the 5, and into the end zone goes Travion Henderson on a 75-yard touchdown run for the Buckeyes on the first play from scrimmage in the third quarter.
Wrapping up the show here on a Tuesday on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Want to tell you real quick about our friends at Warhorse Sportsbook. They are the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. You can do so live in Lincoln at the casino or in Omaha at Horseman's Park, 6303 Q Street. You can build your bets on the Bet Builder on the Warhorse Casino app, then go in person to the casino and place your bets. You can bet on pretty much every major sporting event, straight bets, parlays, props, live in-game, whatever you want there. Visit warhorsecasino.com/sportsbook or get the Warhorse Casino app for details and full list of house rules. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. Joining us on that Warhorse Sportsbook hotline is our friend Tim May. He is with Letterman Row. They cover everything Ohio State football. Tim, how are you this morning?
I'm doing extremely well, man. I got to put the saddle on my Warhorse and get after it here.
Yeah, I love it.
Love it. We love to hear it, Tim. You've obviously you're the Buckeyes are about to giddy up this week and face their obviously biggest game of the season with Michigan. Before we get to the Michigan game, though, I want to ask you about how this season has gone in general for Ohio State. I know there was a little bit of concern, maybe is too strong of a word, but some question marks around Kyle McCord and that quarterback position. Started off a little bit slower. The offense has gotten going a little bit as the year has gone on. How has this team performed through 11 games compared to what your expectations were coming into the season?
Yeah, that's a good question because, you've gotten kind of used to, as you look back on it, you've gotten kind of used to quarterbacks just kind of stepping up and stepping out, and especially since Ryan Day has been there. But really, if you look at Justin Fields early on, I mean, he had a really good opener, but basically early on in his first few starts, he was a little tentative. Matter of fact, his spring game, we were all wondering, wait a minute, maybe Ohio State got sold a bill of goods here, when he transferred from Georgia. And he turned out to be all right. And then C.J. Stroud had the tough start first tough first half against Minnesota. I'm just giving you a kind of a quick synopsis historically of why you don't get hysterical, historically. Sure. And obviously, he had to sit out after they got beat. Set out the next game because he had a sore shoulder, and Kyle McCord played that whole game against Akron as a true freshman, and they won that game, handily. The point is, people get so fired up about what has happened before and forget about the progression it takes for the first-year starting quarterback, no matter what year he is in the system. And I think people kept putting the cart before the horse in this situation, with Kyle McCord. I mean, I've been around the game very much long enough to understand first-year starting quarterbacks are going to have their teething pains in some form or fashion. And a lot of times it's because of phantoms that pop up, and a lot of times it's because of ghosts that pop up, two different things, because a phantom intercepts the ball, a ghost is somebody you thought was there but wasn't. and just right on down the line. And then, of course, they dealt with Travion Henderson being available, then not available. He sat out an extended period in midseason. Anybody with a radio, forget your own eyeballs, anybody with a radio can see what he brings to the attack when he's in there, and he's feeling pretty good. And the last several games have been a Travion Henderson power parade. And then, of course, Marvin Harrison Jr., the best receiver in the country.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Emeka Egbuka missed several games. Yeah, I mean, so putting the pieces all back together has been sort of what Ohio State's been doing, along with developing an offensive line with 3 new starters on it compared to this time a year ago. And if there's ever a moment here so far where it looks like the pieces have come together, it is now. And that doesn't mean Saturday presents the toughest challenge they've faced all year, both offensively and defensively, at least in my opinion. Forget about all the stuff that's going on off the field. I mean, Michigan is a really good, really, really good football team, as opposed to badminton. And so, this, I think it's come together at the right time. We'll see if it's good enough, offensively, but there is a sense around Ohio State that it is.
Well, Tim, I touch on that off the field stuff just a little bit here for me, because Michigan won't have Jim Harbaugh on the sidelines for this one. Do you look at that as a real advantage for Ohio State in this game, or because he can coach practice all week, it really doesn't make much of a difference?
You said touch on it, right?
Yeah, just touch on it. Yeah, just touch on it.
Touched it. It's hot. It's really hot. It's radioactive. Well, I was saying like 4 or 5 weeks ago, I was doing all kinds of, my podcast, and I do Urban Steak with Urban Meyer every week. He was pretty much not touching it as you're talking about, but until things sort of like came into more clarity. We'll see what he says this week. We'll be posting that tomorrow afternoon at on3.com. But I was saying a month ago that what needed to happen was they needed to canvass the athletic directors, or the Tony Petitti needed to do that with the athletic directors more than the coaches, really, just to see how big a deal they thought this really was, and then go from there. And which is what they did, and which is what Tony Petitti did. And I kept reminding people on radio, as I did in Michigan, this isn't Tony Petitti versus Jim Harbaugh. This is the Big Ten versus Michigan football, the Michigan football program, and what went on there. And it's funny. I mean, I'm not saying I was prescient, but it's funny how that's exactly what happened. But what bothered me was this is not even a 3 game day suspension. This is a 3 game window suspension on the head coach. Otherwise, he's with the team until they go to the stadium, just like last week. Flew with them, flew back with them. And he's part and parcel to all the preparation leading up to the games. I thought it should be a 3-week suspension, meaning you're persona non grata, in your own building there. So I think really they went light on Michigan in that regard, based on what the NCAA has proven so far and passed along to the Big Ten. But it is what it is. That the sense is this is far from over. We'll see where that goes, but they got a boost from it, you do think, against Penn State, but that boost kind of seemed to blow out last week at Maryland. But I've seen Ohio State go to Maryland before playing in the game several times and escape. And that's exactly what Michigan did. They escaped. The Wolverines escaped Maryland. And the harbinger aspect of it, I'm not sure that has anything to do with the game, because last year, if you remember, Michigan had to kick a field goal on the last play of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the last play of the game against Illinois to win the week before they did what they did to Ohio State in the second half here in Ohio Stadium. So I'm not – you don't know what's going to happen in a game, meaning you don't know what big decision is going to come up. The fact that Sharon Moore's had quite a bit of experience now doing this, because, remember, Jim Harbaugh missed the first 3 games of the year too, and the past 2. I mean, I've never heard of a coach being suspended ever for half of his regular season games. This is new territory, and Michigan folks can slough it off, but I mean, this is a stain of some sort on their program. But it looked like when they needed to play last week, they got one. When they needed to kind of bail out J.J. McCarthy at Penn State, when the passing game just didn't seem to be. I mean, I know he was 6 out of 8, but he didn't seem right. And last week he seemed pretty bothered by that ankle sprain. They've still been able to get the win. And fellas, y'all know this. I mean, even coming that game, y'all's game is Friday, right?
Right.
The W is all that matters at this point in the season.
Amen.
Isn't that right? Tim, I want to, I feel like college football as a whole is rooting for Ohio State in this game, because giving Michigan a loss can kind of bail them out of having to put Michigan in the college football playoff with all the drama this year. Are you guys going to be able to do everybody a favor and get Michigan out of there?
Well, I don't play. I'm not going to be playing. I'll try to stay.
I thought you were going to suit up this week, Tim. What are you doing?
No, I'm suiting up. All right. I'm going as the Thanksgiving turkey.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about the college football playoff situation is that, Ward Manuel's on that committee, the athletic director at Michigan. So, yeah, I don't know how.
It's a little awkward.
Yeah. Could you, it might be 68 degrees in their meeting room, and he could be saying, "Could you turn down the heat?" I mean, because who knows what he's feeling, thinking, etc. But this is still a really good football team, man. I'm telling you.
It is.
I mean, they've got really nice offensive line. I don't think it's as good as it was last year. They got a really good defensive front. But Ohio State's one of the few teams in the country that's built to attack any aspect of a defense if it can protect. I'm talking about in the passing game and in the running game with Travion Henderson coming on, but also don't short shrift Dallin Hayden, the sophomore. They're trying to get a redshirt year for him. He's played in 3 games. If he plays Saturday will be his 4th. But yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what the reaction is afterwards if Ohio State does pull it off.
Mm-hmm.
Tim May from Letterman Row covering Ohio State football. Tim, we appreciate your time as always. And on behalf of the rest of the college football world, I think we're rooting for Ohio State. Let's get Michigan. Let's get those punks out of here. Cheaters.
Yeah, and by the way that music came on, I didn't know if this was the part where you wanted me to sing.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, if you have a number for us, that'd be great.
Yeah, I got a number for you. 25.
Yeah.
That's Tim May.
I'll take the over.
We'll talk to you later, Tim.
All right, fellas. See you, man.